This guy's living a regular life as a warehouse packer. Completely normal existence. But here's the twist. He's got this insane tolerance for drugs. Every pill he pops gives him different boosts. Physical strength, mental clarity, you name it. He's just walking home one day when the sky splits open. A massive portal tears through the city, and demons start pouring out. Thanks to his vitamin-fueled reflexes, he dodges death and actually takes down a boss-level demon. But this is just the beginning. New enemies are coming, and the question is, what substances will keep him alive? Our protagonist's name is Parkle, 22 years old, working his shift at the warehouse. Everyone's packing boxes when his co-worker offers him dinner. Parkle declines, saying he's got plans tomorrow. The guy's curious because Parkle's the only one who doesn't look exhausted after a full day. The secret: vitamins. Parkle discovered his special attribute during military service. His buddy gave him supplements, and after brutal training sessions, just 2 vitamins would wipe away all his fatigue. Omega-3 cleared his mind like nothing else, sharpening his focus to a razor's edge. He's walking home from the bus stop, thinking about grabbing coffee from the convenience store. That's when this girl approaches him. She's staring with this desperate look, saying she's never told anyone this before. Parkle's thinking she's about to confess her feelings. He asks how he can help, genuinely expecting something romantic. Turns out, she's recruiting for a cult. The girl, Han Yuni, insists she's not a bad person before running off. Parkle's left standing there, completely done with cults and saints. His father's the reason. Used to be stable until one day he announced he'd become a saint through homemade medicine. Quit his job, moved to the countryside, mixed random ingredients with medications. Kept ending up in the hospital with stomach issues. Then 20 years ago, when Parkle was just 2, his dad walked into nature saying he'd return with energy. Never came back. His mother struggled alone ever since. Parkle's at the store buying more vitamins, thinking about how his dad should have just stuck to supplements like him. As he walks outside, something appears in the sky. A gigantic circle hovering above the city. Everyone's confused, wondering if it's art or maybe a spaceship. The ground starts trembling. People panic. The asphalt cracks open, and a hand emerges from the fissure. A horrifying demon crawls out, standing right in front of Parkle. His heart races. A message appears. Nutrients will be utilized. Energy provided. His senses and reflexes enhanced. The demon lunges at him, but the attack looks slow. Parkle dodges effortlessly, completely confused. He wonders if he's always had this monstrous power, assuming it's because of the supplements. He can flee easily now. But then he sees other people getting slaughtered by more demons. That pisses him off. He charges back in, kicks a demon clean off the ground. Both rush for the creature's club. Parkle grabs it first, smashes it into the demon's skull. Weaker than expected. More demons swarm him. He defeats them one by one until he's surrounded by bodies. A giant demon appears overhead. Parkle thinks maybe it's also weaker, decides to fight. Wrong call. That monster's already attacking before he can blink. Blood sprays everywhere. People are still fighting these things all over the city. 2 guys hiding in a store are terrified, asking what happens if the monsters reach them. Someone crashes through their entrance, and a giant demon follows. The man begs for his life, screaming for help. At that exact moment, someone lights a cigarette. The system announces the elixir has been consumed. Parkle launches himself at the demon with a flying kick, sends it flying. He strikes a pose, saying it's round 2. Adrenaline surges through his body. He rushes the demon again, lands a punch square in its face. Follows with a combination, but the demon retaliates. Parkle dodges, says he's still full of energy. Another punch connects. He drives the demon's face into the asphalt, successfully defeating it. The cigarette definitely had an effect. He hopes his mother's okay. The demon rises again, grabs Parkle's head, punches him, throws him to the ground. Parkle barely holds its hand, delivers a punch to its stomach, finally knocks it out for good. He's exhausted, can't move. But more people are still trapped, unable to escape. He tries getting up, has no energy left. Wonders where these demons came from, why they're attacking normal people. Begs them to stop. A demon grabs a man. Parkle's just watching, powerless. The demon's about to finish the victim when someone appears midair, holding paper. They cast a spell, defeat several demons at once. Parkle's shocked. They took out multiple demons simultaneously. Who is that person, and are they even human? The girl approaches, says he did well. Asks how he killed a demon without training. Wants to know who he is. Parkle's got no reaction. She says she needs to check his potential, tells him to extend his hand. He's confused, but she casts a spell that pulls his hand forward. She analyzes it, can't believe what she's seeing. It's not celestial or earthly, but not human either. An irregular being. She's sad this child was chosen, but can't allow someone to become a disaster. She needs to eliminate him now. Parkle thanks her for helping, says something bad would have happened without her. He doesn't know how to repay her. She falls silent, thinking it's a pity his manners and pure energy are wasted. She throws a pill into his mouth. He swallows it, realizes it's bitter. Questions what she gave him. He collapses. She explains it's medicine to seal his energy center. Not typically used to seal demons, but it's the only way to save his life. One day his irregular powers will ruin his life and the world around him. Even though he might suffer, it's for the greater good. She asks him not to hate her, says if fate allows they'll meet again. She walks away without giving her name. Parkle hits the ground, wondering what he did to deserve that medicine. What she meant by irregular, and if it relates to his special attribute. He gets up, says not to make him laugh. Without these powers, his skull would be cracked open. He rushes to a store, grabs supplements, starts drinking. The system announces the drug has been consumed. From that day on, he'll use these powers to survive. Later at home, he's stocked up on supplements. Hangover drinks work on his body too. He remembers the girl mentioned disaster, that the medicine must have some effect. For now, he'll grab everything needed and head to his mother. His phone rings, a government message. Monsters are everywhere. Download the department's app for information. The app's called Special Precautions Number 24. Terrible design, probably just created. He scans his ID. Strange letters appear around him. The system announces they've confirmed he has a spiritual physique. Will begin analyzing his body. Parkle thinks it's similar to what the woman said, related to the irregularity. He feels pain, wondering why this is happening now. The medicine's effects are kicking in. He drinks more supplements, feels better. The message completes its analysis. Blue void material. Color represents trees. Extremely rare chance of obtaining water. Called bluish fuel because it works like condensed elixir. Holds Earth's energy. The energy is an ingredient in the medicine he took. Since the hangover drink cured the poison effect, only the blue matter's energy remained in his body. Something interesting happens. His body's burning up. He thinks he should wait for the fever to drop, but feels restless. Wonders if there's a way to feel comfortable. He has an idea, meditation. One of those positions from martial arts movies. Very comfortable. He'll stay like this until the fever drops. The system announces the results show a mundane body full of tree energy. He wonders what that means, if the poison effects disappeared. A different colored system appears. A man emerges, greeting all Korean citizens. Everything he's about to say is completely true. 10,000 years ago, the world was more spectacular. Monsters roamed Earth. Beings from other worlds crossed galaxies to reach here. Humans were killed and discarded. A few chosen ones were granted spiritual physiques, special power they didn't possess before. This gave humans life expectancy comparable to monsters. The beginning of a world where anyone could wield great powers. These people were named monks. They sacrificed their lives to close the gates to heaven, allowing humans to thrive on Earth. Remembered as myths and legends, their stories passed through generations. They continued protecting the gates as humanity progressed. Until a few hours ago. All chosen monks will patrol designated areas to protect humanity's safety. Tested for abilities, giving them the right to enforce law when necessary. Parkel's analyzing the system, wondering if these are skills for his aptitudes. Several screens appear in his vision. All the parts where he feels heat emanating. After training systematically for a certain period, you can emanate heat from at least one of 3 places. Once those 3 places heat up, begin training of the ground path. Until yesterday he didn't believe in religion, but now he's practicing the sacred breathing technique. He starts meditating. Surprised because it's easier than expected. Even with a spiritual body, feeling energy gathering in the 3 cores takes months or years depending on talent. With enough training, one can reach emptiness, unconsciousness of surroundings. Parkel takes his first step toward becoming a monk. When he opens his eyes, plants are surrounding his body. He wonders what this is, how long he's been in that position. His phone's dead. He looks for a clock. June 22nd. 100 days passed while meditating. If you're enjoying the breakdown, consider subscribing. It helps the channel grow. He's showered. Happy there's still water. Strange his injuries healed. He doesn't feel hungry. Hasn't lost much weight. Actually became stronger. Charging his phone, he thinks about checking news. Looking outside, there's a barrier shaped like a giant dome. Holes with monsters coming out. An extreme danger zone. Another earthquake occurs. A horrifying figure walking across the field. Demons surrounding buildings. He needs to get out immediately. No signal. Calling emergency help is his only option. He put himself to sleep with breathing technique. Survived 100 days in lotus position. A system appears, welcoming him. Not connected to network, some features require connection. Only his profile opens with information and a strange thing called charm copies. 2 available. The system announces 3 usable charms. Depending on nickname and ranking, higher level charms are given. First one's called Soft Steps, special 9th rank magic. Easy enough. Doesn't feel any change. He takes a small step, hits his face against the wall. The special magic contracted is real. What are the other abilities? One allows carrying more weight. The other creates a tornado of light. He wonders if he should use it on the roof, but monsters could see the light and come after him. He copied the breathing technique last time. Should take a closer look. Training divided from 1 to 10 stars. After 5th star, he can use nature techniques. Surprised because he can increase levels. Hopes dashed. Takes at least 10 years to raise a star. Would need 70 years to use one of those. He'll check how many stars he has first to assess himself. Place energy into both hands. Check energy rings on left hand. He channels energy into his hands. Number of rings represents star level. He seems surprised. A tiger charges toward him. He needs something quickly. The beast's already at his door, attacking, tearing into his shoulder. Ancient China had a skill called absorption method, capable of stealing a beast's vitality. Parkel shows something similar. He uses a 6th level art, successfully defeats the beast. A green aura surrounds him. He survived because he found a useful ability. He collapses. The system announces muscle formed, blood stable, red blood cell production drastically increased. Green glow emanates from his eye. He wonders what's happening, why enormous energy flows throughout his body. Nutrients replenished when he absorbed energy from that monster. Great, enough to hold up after using light tornado. Plants sprouting from the monster's body. Definitely wasn't there before. He should pick them up. He can only use 1 sprout at a time. If he had time to absorb energy before finishing monsters, he could do something better. Better avoid too many problems. Needs to hold on until rescue team arrives. Observing light tornado ability, he'll need to use it at some point. Another monster appears, charges again. He uses that ability, lands a punch. No time to relax. Needs to get up, call for rescue. But every time he encounters monsters, he defeats them. Never ends, keeps coming back. He reaches the rooftop, completely surprised. A gigantic monster stands next to him. Another appears behind him. It's all or nothing. He charges the giant monster, uses light tornado ability. Later, a voice asks where he is. A man flying. Parkle sends a signal. He's down below. The man questions why he's standing there, asks if he has a talisman to fly or jump. Parkle says he only has the 3 from earlier. The man says that's boring, tells him to extend his hand. Wonders what the boy's doing, if he can't hear. Parkle points out there's a monster behind him. The man uses a talisman, effortlessly defeats it. Tells him not to make him repeat himself, extend his hand. Asks who he is, wandering a restricted area, if he doesn't value his life. The man says it doesn't matter, he doesn't need to know. Parkle thanks him for saving him. Leaving the barrier, Parkle thinks it scared him. Countless notifications from his mother. He understands, trapped there 100 days. Happy his mother and relatives are fine. Many things happened during that time. How different everything could be now. He's in a building, telling his mother he wanted to call again. He was lost but found his way back. He'll see her in a few days. The other guy asks if he finished his call. Parkle says yes, relieved his relatives and mother seems safe. A man rushes into the room, desperate. Wonders if Parkle's who he thinks. Introduces himself, one of the disciples under command of the region unit. The man seems uninterested, asks the officer to leave. Orders him to do it, not to make him repeat himself. The man asks if Parkle learned Ascendant even before his heavenly gate opened. Parkle says he had not. The man asks if he's worthy of waking his sleeping master. Parkle coldly observes. A system screen appears. The man asks if he can see it, if it says Ascendant. Total of 9 high ranks. Most awakened ones are disciples called saints. Mundane rank is highest. That man was recognized for qualifications. Qualified as Ascendant under his master. Age and ethnicity don't matter. Person who accumulated most disciple training is senior, not necessarily younger. That's why Parkle must do his best for his senior. Unspoken rule. Parkle asks if Ascendant's the lowest rank, what rank his master is. This irritates the man who tells him not to speak of what he doesn't know. Parkle was born with spiritual physique, so to survive he must stay under protection of superiors. No second chance. If he says that again, he'll die. Parkle says he heard no one can change masters 3 times, so the man might be following that master because his way of speaking's interesting. This leaves the man furious. A system screen appears showing Parkle's information. He thought the man mentioned rank was closest after Ascendant. Parkle stands, says he needs to do his best for his superior. Later that man's arguing with his master, asking if he's treated his senior as told, if he's saying he handed over the technique. Irritated says he's foolish. Wanted to say he inherited a bandit's technique, lowered his head to that man. The man says his performance range is greater than his own, which is why he's a high saint. His master says it could be body condition, but the man says if that's the case, he certainly could have irregular physique. This annoys the master more, questioning if he'll keep saying foolish things. If he's implying the boy has Mbane physique like the two of them. The man asks if his training's more accelerated. The master doesn't know, originally difficult to see a human climb toward nature. Humans came from water, returned to land. Mastered fire to fend off cold, melted iron to refine it. Great similarities between living things, but relationships quite incompatible. The master says the report's likely because it's extremely rare. If he understood, shouldn't mention construction method. They'll deliver a drug when breathing stabilizes. The master thinks it's fascinating. Star wind only exists for those inclined toward nature. How he'd never heard of such a thing. Parkle's at home working on his computer. According to government announcement, not a single person had irregular physique in all nations. Few people with irregular physique in tests were isolated. He hasn't been caught yet. Irregular physique divided into 3 types: celestial, mundane, human. 4th was unpredictable, could appear even in past decade when saints disappeared. Monsters still tried interfering. Saints united, banished them. Their existence nothing more than legends. 2 examples don't make sense. Why should he be banished? He's not a famous serial killer. Drinking coffee, system informs drug consumed. Even in brown rice teabag, it's worth trembling seeing someone obtain maximum effectiveness. He got mundane physique result in test, blue matter from Brazil given. While he doesn't know how long drug lasts, he's trying to find similar effects. Nothing reliable. Might be limit to information spread to private sector. He has an idea. Searches drugs in his search bar, finds information. Observing seeds, wonders what they are. Seeds he saw before while fighting a beast. Thought they were common. No images about germination online. Makes anonymous post asking if anyone's seen these seeds. Purgatory herbs. Grow naturally near river sites. Eating raw makes person sick. Conditions for germination restrictive. Extremely difficult to obtain germinated seeds. His are already germinated. Decides to experiment with ungerminated ones. Uses solar wind breathing technique on seeds. They start growing in his hands. A man enters the room shouting, but Parkle's gone. Man wonders if he escaped, searches room to see if he stole anything. Opens refrigerator, discovers the boy took one of his peaches. Elsewhere, Parkle continues experimenting. A small tree grows. He says he only breathed 2 hours and it grew a lot. Through breathing, energies exchanged with everything around. Solar wind technique has power to make plants grow. If he continues cultivating herbs, won't have problems living as a regular. He consumes purgatory herb sprout while breathing. Heat spreads similarly to blue matter. Red aura disappears. He wonders if he did something wrong. Tries again. Aura disappears. Thought it was working. Why part remained in lower abdomen? Confused if it's because blue matter from void was higher quality. Chewing sprout. Decides to try again. Red aura returns, but heat's different. Remembers internet posts about Yin energy. Purgatory herb has Yin nature. Blue matter has Yang nature. He wonders if he needs energy absorption technique for Yin energy. If he encounters mixed energies, his life could be in danger. Relief despite low efficacy. Power can increase. He uproots the small tree. Noise startles him. Just phone message. Reads it. Majesty's son died. Warns everyone about rain. All residents evacuate immediately. People panic, wondering why they weren't warned sooner. Heavy rain begins. Worms appear in streets. People say less dangerous if they don't touch them. Parkle notices protective barrier around building. Relieved for following those people. Outside, someone screams for help. Huge monstrous bird stands before woman. Parkle's shocked. Bird uses claws to lift woman, throws her into nest full of worms. Monster observes people inside barrier. Frightened man says if he'd been late, would have been him. Parkle activates abilities. Letting healthy person die makes no sense. Steps out of barrier to face creature. Lands blow on bird's head. Falls easily. He doesn't remember being that strong. Wonders if it's because of purgatory herbs consumed earlier. Realizes intense rains the tears of Dragon King. He consumed them. Water made trees grow, become stronger. Activates and amplifies his energy from nature element. He can do anything now. Decides to use artifact refinement on tree. Becomes demon slayer. Bird rises again, furious. Charges. He defends, thinking if he lets guard down he'll be pushed back. Doesn't have much time before hitting protective barrier. Needs to hold on. Creature opens gap. He takes advantage, attacks. Attack hadn't even scratched it. Wonders if it's because of demon slaying blade. Bird gets up again, eyes fixed on blade. Decides to attack woman on ground. He saves her. She thanks him. He replies it's still too early to feel relieved. Bird becomes enraged seeing them escape, strikes them. Woman manages to return inside barrier. Parkle's not as lucky, crashes into wall. He stands up, relieved. No fractures thanks to layers. Effect wore off. Monster flies to attack again. He smiles. A bird that big flying's total farce. Realizes he can't run to shelter anymore. Drug effect wearing off, already weakening. Wonders if he should plant sprouts. Difficult to use against monster. Since it's a gamble with slim victory chances, he'll use trump card. Demon Slayer Blade has characteristics of both plant and sword. Growing roots into ground takes time to exchange energy, strengthen it enough. While Dragon's Tears Falling, possible to increase sword's power using technique that absorbs rain, stores energy of subdue demon. His sword's charged with lightning. He charges toward monster, lands blow on beast. Monster's head gets stuck in building. He takes opportunity, cuts off its head. People watching can't believe he killed that thing. If someone had been killed by bird, authorities wouldn't pay attention. But he didn't hesitate to save someone in danger. They compare him to superhero. People start recording videos. He's suddenly attacked. A man appears, asking if he knew what he just did. Killed bird that Miss Yua cherished. Burning someone like him wouldn't be enough punishment. Video of attack goes viral. Criticism starts emerging. Woman asks if her child died, if that man burned the insolent one who killed her messenger. Assistant responds, for now the boy's detained. Yua says it seems everyone despises her, only keeping that impertinent boy in custody. Becomes furious, orders all humans be told if they don't want to suffer her wrath, set example and kill the boy. Assistant responds there's report indicating protagonist's actions became trending topic. Wound should be kind. Great satisfaction with new leadership. Yua says rules of that world aren't fun. Government rules frightening. She's sure there's some way to calm her down. The man responds he prepared tribute to ensure Miss Yua's reputation won't be tarnished. She says she'll wait for it. Rain begins to stop. Woman says Dragon King relieved his sorrow. Illusion that transcendent beings are free from desire. Yua grabs package. Thinks important things she managed to obtain it. Piece of trunk. Fruits called treasure of fantasy even by gods. Flowers only bloom once every 3,000 years. Mystical tree only grows in orchard of Queen Mother of the West. Peaches of tree of immortality. When Queen Mother sacrificed herself to close heaven's gates, orchard disappeared. If she could obtain sprout from bark, her name would replace Queen Mother of the West. Parkle's walking down street. Remembering man told him he made all deities look like bad people. From now on, shouldn't do anything that makes him stand out. He looks at his hand, thinks even though sword was confiscated, he's happy to have obtained that. That night he found block of wood in bird's body. Wondered why piece of wood stuck to ankle of monster. Realized trunk's alive. That man appeared, he managed to get sprout before being attacked. Wonders if he should try cultivating it. A year later, news report says government took various measures to purify water. Man complains about smell. Water problems because of monster. Government should deal with it. Month ago when celestial energy was in disarray, monster hid in Han River. 1,000-year-old snakehead fish. After crossing world of monsters into river in human world, became powerful enough to claim title of god. Calling itself sovereign of Han River. Declared no one can use river's waters until human sacrifice fulfilled. Boy watching report says fish seems to have worm's brain. That's Yongyu, disciple from one of 8 sacred mountains on Korean peninsula. Someone tells him to avoid unrelated comments during meeting, better to behave and sit properly. That's Shin Su, youngest disciple of one of 8 sacred mountains. Boy doesn't care about meeting. Not a problem they can discuss and solve alone. Everything based on immense will of elders. Woman becomes irritated. Asks if that's what his master taught. Says 10,000 people contracted diseases because of water. Should find solution as soon as possible. Asks how he dared insult her master. Yongyu asks if she's capable of killing sovereign of Han River. For best immortal mystics tried to stop creature but failed. Questions if she wants everyone to die at hands of that fish. Difficulty in dealing with sovereign lies in ability to use both earth and water techniques. Very few people mastered 2 techniques like sovereign. Only way to defeat it's with a mortal who masters earth to force it away, or someone with high rank in earth and water energy. He says he won't stop Yongyu from making plans but won't participate. Woman becomes angry. Breaks presentation remote. Boy leaves to train. If someone could defeat that fish, they'd have solution. Woman walks into forest carrying demon-slaying sword. Remembers year ago, man was buried with that weapon. Although imprisoned and eventually released, sword was confiscated, kept by immortal society. Rare wooden tool, since shaped like sword, brought confusion to heavens. Just as energy inhabiting weapon gradually disappeared, confusion came to end. Parkle hasn't set foot outside Guan in past year. Sometimes went out to eat with mother or friends, watch movies in free time. Girl remembers he said he wasn't using phone apps, so wouldn't calculate achievements. Considering what he'd been through, wouldn't be impossible. Protagonist appears. Seeing girl, he turns corner. Yong-gyu thinks she can't lose him, decides to follow. Can't catch up even running full speed with talisman help. She loses track. Parkle reappears, asks if she's affiliated with Immortal Society. Says he had no intention of running away, just surprised she was following. Girl notices he's sweating. Wonders why he only used physical strength, not talisman to get rid of her. She throws device to him. User changed. Yong-gyu discovers he's still high immortal but ranked below her. Parkle asks if Yang wanted to use his wood element to kill Sovereign of Han River. Wonders if immortals really wanted that monster dead. Yang says no. Reason seniors hadn't taken action. Wanted to see juniors solve problem without help. Parkle says thousands suffering because of it. Asks if by cooperating he'd be compensated, if he could get sword back. Yang asks how he knew about that. Parkle replies by breathing he can interact with trees around. Function of technique he learned. Yang thinks that's why he could run so fast in forest. Parkle says he first wants to know if curfew would be lifted as reward. Yang replies he's allowed to be rewarded, but attracting everyone's attention's big problem. Besides, no one to promise anything just because he helped. Yang explains curfew initially imposed by superiors to punish Parkle for killing Mrs. Bird. Now incident could easily be resolved if she did everything to persuade that man helping them get rid of Sovereign of Han River. Later Parkles by river bank. Other man asks why they needed to go there. Doesn't know if Parkle came to try something, but it's the nuance he saw, wanted to see creature. Yang asks him to calm down. All because of Sovereign of Han River. Wonders what protagonist could do. Taking album from backpack. Thinks it's disgusting. Prepared for this moment but hadn't expected to use so soon. Woman warns it's dangerous to get closer. Ends up surprised by what he's doing. Parkle asks if she hadn't seen this in elementary school. Used to generate plants in class. That plant's very good for purifying water quality. Halfway done. Rest remaining. Giant creature emerges from lake. Protagonist grabs sword. Gets ready. Says he's about to start fishing for that fish. Thunderous roar echoes. Creature declares it's god of that river, not someone obedient to another. Attacks protagonist who barely dodges. He seems to start casting spell, hurling at creature. Furious, it asks how he dared. Gets hit by several projectiles, leaving monster more enraged. Yang's protecting other men. Thinks it's impressive. By using purifying plants, Parkle completely drained all dirty elements from River Sovereign. If he continued at that pace, simply wouldn't win battle. Monster says despite ability to deal with hard-to-see energy, petty tricks don't work. Attacks boy again. He seems to start falling into lake. Throws more seeds to support himself. Mentions this the last one he had. Throws at monster. Creature says it's tree struck by lightning. Asks if Parkle intended to destroy its body with little toy. Parkle says it's toy he placed in her heart. Asks if she can't feel it. He starts diving again, saying they'll see each other. Begins casting spell. Thunderbolt and lightning dart he made himself. Couldn't just let creature leave. Starts electrocuting entire area, successfully hitting creature. Huge explosion engulfs area, successfully defeating creature. Protagonist says now air's much fresher. Standing on top of serpent, says he committed bad act again. Attracting attention once more, doesn't think it'll end well. Reason mortals neglected Han's sovereign, really for sake of trials and growth. All of this for their disciples, not normal people. Looking around, Seems he found what he's looking for. Smaller than expected. Inner core of water-based creatures. Reinforced crystals rebuilt in hope of becoming dragon. He decides to take it as reward for mission. Man suddenly insults protagonist, asking what he's doing. They quickly use magic to restrain him, ask if boy knew what he'd done. That man's celestial king called Mikusa. Girl watching from above recognizes man restraining protagonist. Remembers words of that other man. Just act like everything's fine until ungrateful immortals found themselves in trouble, started complaining. Fact they appeared like this and sovereign subdued meant they'd altered fate of Han River's death. Girl greets man, says she didn't know how seniors came to that place. Man questions whether worth saying place is safe or authorized. Asks if she's not disciple of tech. She quickly responds correct. Man questions whether she's saying disciple of such master didn't recognize gravity of situation. That boy she brought trained only 1 year without master. Even though wood construction techniques rare, man who trained without master for year used techniques strong enough to defeat sovereign. Asks if she's not doubting guy's identity. Warns if she dares open mouth again. Brings great humiliation to tech. Completely desperate. Girl seems to understand. Protagonist begins to laugh. Man asks if he lost his fear. Parkle asks why he'd be desperate. Wonders if he did something wrong. They're doubting him just because he has unique ability. Unfortunately, second time it happened, so he's already checking app. Only 3 minutes after Fish died, they all appeared. Everyone around seems confused. Parkle says they should have been watching Fish closely. Judging by how they appeared right after death, asks if they thought if they'd killed Fish it would be well regarded by public. Since they ruined everything they could have used to grow, came running in desperation. Boy now completely irritated tells them to stop. Explosion happens. Claims it's protagonist who caused it. He ends up surprised. Attack had no effect. Parkle says he always aimed for stomach just like before. Points sword at man who becomes completely enraged. Asks if Parkle knew what it meant to point sword at him, if he had any last words before he died. To Parkle, wasn't as if he'd die. Man wouldn't be able to kill him. About to attack, man says his arrogance reached heavens. Unleashes attack. Massive explosion occurs. Man seems surprised. Someone else arrived to interrupt fight. Says watchman should guard garden. Questions what he wanted in that place. Name of that man's Beck, high-level immortal from 3 realms of heaven. Beck said he had request for his lady. Hoped he hadn't interrupted their display of power, but this just unjustified violence. Now from what he saw, that boy's quite foolish. If they wanted to fight he wouldn't stop. Both would have bad reputation. Boy had no justification, so please don't get in elder's way. The two disappeared. Man asks why that lady had to call Elder Beck to save protagonist. Later young man seems walking somewhere with Beck, asking if young man knew he would appear, if that's why he'd been so bold. Mentions would give him advice. Might think he's special but uncommon arrogance leads to ruin. Hearing what man said, protagonist remains silent. Says he'll keep that in mind, thanks Elder for advice. 1.5 years passed since that day. He still remembers how confused he was with setbacks. No matter how good intentions were, they weren't well received by everyone. He prepared carefully since story of Han River Sovereign began to unfold. For that reason, wouldn't have to go through that again. Wouldn't act without knowing things. Wouldn't be treated as fool. Wouldn't be victim as he was that time. Miss Yua has garden. Not just any garden, one where divine medicinal herbs are carefully selected and cultivated. Story about that garden could have just been rumor. He devised plan to see solid evidence. Plan to attract attention of lady who had garden. That's why now he's prepared, standing in front of her. Yua asks if he mentioned his name was Parkle. Questions if young man knew what those were. Boy responds they're seeds of purgatory grass. Woman says such precious thing discovered by mortals, repressing on black market. She investigated seller, punished him severely. Sensing gravity, protagonist kneels, admits he sinned gravely. Explains he had no choice, living conditions very poor. Woman asks him to lift head. Says it's all fine now, he paid for sins. Only showed mercy so punishment would be balanced. Price for killing her bird wasn't light, yet she'd show mercy once again. Asks why he didn't work in her garden. She personally has garden cultivating grasses and herbs. If boy's capable of cultivating purgatory grass, certainly has enough skill to cultivate common aquatic plants that purified poison of sovereign of Han River. Parkle thanks her, says she thought so highly of him. Reason behind plant cultivation, all due to technique he learned. Yua says using that technique should take only day or two for common plants to start bearing fruit. Parkle replies purgatory grass hadn't grown more than sprout. No matter how much time or effort dedicated, wouldn't grow any further. Woman asks if he's saying he lacks dexterity. Protagonist admits true. Woman comments he had more courage than appeared. Couldn't believe what he's negotiating with her. She'd support him with divine medicinal herbs from garden for proper tools. Additionally, would accompany him to help become enlightened. Would assign another young man to assist. Kneeling again, protagonist thanks her for mercy. This had always been part of his plan. Giving signal to other girl, Yua asks if she'd been there all along. Girl quickly approaches master. Lady asks what her verdict is. Girl mentions Parkle seems suspicious. Being so cordial looked as if plotting something. Moreover, heard he's one who killed her bird, even defeated sovereign of Han River. Boy wasn't experienced, but to achieve so much could only mean genius or truly idiot. Girl asks if master knew he'd been scheming from start, but still accepted him. That's why master asked her to keep eye on him. Woman tells her not to worry. Let him manage 6th garden first. Even if he had bad intentions, wouldn't obtain single seed from garden. If boy turned out useless, could turn him into fertilizer. Girl thinks they decided to work together because of Peninsula Peach. But Yua's lady she couldn't quite like. Even so, hoped protagonist would be more useful. Parkle's walking down street, thinking power of immortal hidden there over 300. Yua's power exceeded 400. Parkle reached 10 stars in Starwind technique over past year, so could roughly gauge others' power. Doesn't fully trust those numbers. Celestial King and Temperamental Man above 600. Additionally, Beck had power level exceeding 400. Protagonist on other hand had about 45. Thinks about how he learned all Starwind techniques during past year, but they're only theoretical. Still has much more work to do. Arriving at destination, thinks he's finally where he needed to be. At that moment stumbles upon glowing sacred tree. Says today he brought something for tree. Sent Manu from Sovereign of Han River. Since giving one to tree, should also receive one in return. Later young man seems meditating in front of tree. Suddenly wakes surprised. Smell of those peaches so good. Managed to improve attack power just by sitting in front of it. Breathing peach been training its form for past year, but only in last week flowers bloomed, bore several fruits. Even so, still quite small. Since they'd grown and matured, at least now he could eat a bit. Voice tells boy not to be so hasty. Looking to side, Parkle seems surprised. Small bear started talking. Parkle asks if he can know who he is. Bear says elder named him Guac. Parkle asks if he's mountain god known as Guanan. Thinks after heaven's gates opened, deities began revealing existence. This one in particular been quite unlucky. Hundreds of years ago when capital moved to Hanguang, land officials believed fire energy from Mount Wanan effectively affected Hainan by adding water energy using mythical statue of unicorn lion along with blue lagoon excavation among other things. They constantly awakened energy of Mount Weskin. That's why bear's only half his height. Parkle mentions he'd been training there over year, thought he would have met him. Only encountered at that moment. Bear explains it's because he didn't see reason to interfere with devote training. Parkle wonders if Bear's goal might be Peach. Since tree distorted area, he couldn't enter barrier. Asks Bear to wait. Just had to eat something. Bear again asks him not to do that. Asks if he hadn't heard what he just said. Very reckless. Tree's energy centered in fruit. If he took it now, tree's protection wouldn't work at all. Asks what boy would do if people watching tree took it. Parkle asks if Bear's going to steal tree. Bear asks if he looked like thief. Wasn't just him. Sooner or later people would notice existence of that place. Right now there's someone at end of hill waiting for protagonist. Looking up, Parkle notices giant barrier. Supposing tremendous energy. Pointing finger upward, Bear says he warned him. If they're attacking barrier so much, could mean determined to get him or perhaps after Peach from Tree of Immortality growing. Parkle says maybe it's Peach mentioned in Journey to the West. One Monkey King eats. Bear tells him to forget that. Important things one of top Taoists after him. Someone using fire techniques. With training, boy able to traverse forms of tree. Mere human body cannot beast effects of Peach of Immortality. Bear's different. That's why should give fruit to him. Only then would he regain spiritual energy to protect him and Tree from that man. Parkle apologizes again. Begins to eat Peach. Leaves Bear completely shocked. Wonders who this boy is. Still, that's Peach of Immortality that transformed Monkey King into strongest man. Wonders what would happen to protagonist. System announces drug been consumed. Parkle immediately sits to meditate. Bear asks how he's feeling, if he's noticed any changes. Young man responds Peach very sweet and fresh. Leaves Bear speechless. Calls him idiot. Parkle thinks Bear really got worked up. No matter what breathing technique tried, couldn't control heat moving freely through body. Although wasn't anything like heat that bothered him last time. Feeling gentler. Bear explains takes 3,000 years to produce low-level fruit. One that grew in year must be very low quality. Parkle says he's having trouble. Asks if Bear could help. Bear says he couldn't help even if wanted. Didn't have power for that. Protagonist throws seed at Bear's forehead. Leaves Bear completely irritated. However, Bear realizes what was thrown. Asks if that wasn't purgatory seed, if he's giving something as precious as that. Protagonist gently hands him several seeds. Mentions at moment that's all he had. Asks if Bear would be able to recover with all that. Bear quickly responds would be easy. Parkle asks what he could do now. Bear replies from now on could start selling caves. Parkle's left completely shocked. Bear told him with just those 3 purgatory grass sprouts, wouldn't be enough to restore power. Protagonist asked if there's anything else he could do. Bear asked if he had anything else up his sleeve besides that. Parkle mentioned he could check something. Accessing system said it had that function. Observing it, Bear noted its map of that area. Parkle realized he'd have to deal with person approaching. Bear asked if Parkle's thinking of fighting. Protagonist confirmed, saying if he just left things as they were, his tree could be taken away. Bear thought obvious Parkle would lose with current power. Wondered what boy could be thinking seeing how calm he was. Young man started running toward approaching figure. Man thought he'd finally found protagonist. Parkle was standing in front of him. Sensing energy, man asked if Parkle's disciple of Celestial King, whether master ordered him to take Parkle back quickly. Young man replied correct, added they'd even given him item. Nine-tailed fox fan. Bear exclaimed nine-tailed fox fan only been seen once 300 years ago. Couldn't believe such treasure created from tail of fox, extremely rare. Being treasure, tail remained intact. Phantom energy it contained must be truly formidable. Man confirmed fan indeed belonged to nine-tail fox. Parkle asked even if it were Celestial King's fan, would he really cause explosion in place filled with people? Man asked if Parkle couldn't feel energy of area. Says no matter what skill used or how much screamed, no one would escape. Bear interjected, explaining man's unusual energy due to treasure using, contained power of 4 celestial beasts. Man growing irritated asked why Bear always interrupted him. Parkle didn't even know about that. Angry, man said even small creature was interfering. Asks why Bear always getting involved in his affairs. Instead of taking Fish's life, would take Parkle's life. Watching situation, Parkle thought his power momentarily reached close to 105 times stronger than initial power. With sacred item, felt like item from fantasy game purchased with money. When Vin arrived, spread energy across mountain lowering abilities. Parkle didn't believe he's truly gathering energy. Realizing situation, Protagonist started using skill called wind distribution. Thinks he's gathering energy distributed. In matter of seconds, man launched attack at protagonist. Parkle simply shattered it. Bear left speechless. Wondered if such martial arts techniques even possible. Parkle asked if he mentioned before that no matter what happened, nothing would leave that place. If someone trying to brandish weapon against another, had to be prepared to face counterattack. Man shocked asked how bastard without proper teachings could dare challenge him. At that moment something strange started happening. Blue glow began surrounding boy. Immediately young man collapsed unconscious. Parkle approached to check if young man okay. Says when he recklessly wielded fan hoping to obtain power greater than his own, his soul was absorbed into it instead of power. Parkle didn't fully believe that's the case. Bear commented if right person achieved this, entire mountain would have blown up. Parkle wondered if sacred item truly that powerful. If it was, he needed that item. Suddenly explosion erupted. Seemed man from earlier attacking barrier. Grabbing disciple, man said unbelievable mistake. Couldn't believe disciple of Celestial King became fool in his domain. Clear child wouldn't escape wrath of Celestial King. Even if he were commander of immortal society or master of red martial arts. Nothing compared to 8 sacred monks. Parkle said he'd done everything purely in self-defense. Thought self-defense also applied to man attacking him. Began to prepare counterattack. Irritated, Elder said he should have burned Parkle year ago. Couldn't understand why Celestial King wanted walking disaster like him. Now that it came to this, would burn Parkle completely, leaving only bones. Protagonist coldly observed without reaction. In matter of seconds, Parkle began to run. Man continued pursuing relentlessly, casting multiple spells. Feeling cornered, Parkle admitted at disadvantage. Felt compatibility with situation didn't seem favorable. Out of all elements, fire least suited for him. Bear urged him to use nine-tailed fox fan quickly. By just inserting energy into it and wielding it, Bear explained it should work no matter element used. But then Elder cast spell that struck poor Bear. Protagonist pondered Bear's idea. Wondered if soul would be sucked in like other boys. Still with no other option, decided to try anyway. Began casting spell with fan's ability. Irritated, Elder shouted asking how Parkle dared to use nine-tailed fox fan. All attacks ended up hitting Elder instead. Leaves Parkle completely stunned. Truly power of sacred item. Wondered where man had gone. At very moment, Parkle struck from behind. Suffered severe wound. Suspects one of organs injured. Rising amidst flames, Elder said pathetic. Not only had Parkle turned Celestial King's disciple into fool, now using nine-tailed fox fan. Parkle couldn't believe he survived. Questioned how so-called immortals could be like this. Elder started casting multiple spells, declaring this would be his end. Spells hit poor boy, dealing fatal blow. Elder mentioned wouldn't let Parkle use dirty tricks again. So would take him to Celestial King. Young man overwhelmed wondered if moment he'd die. Supposed if body had been fully restored, could have won. Confused why pain suddenly vanished. Peach began to float in air. System announced drug analysis complete. Long time ago, Monkey King sought freedom from interference, obtained his skin. Wasn't harmed by many sacred items wielded by Celestial Realm. Endured 49 days on eightfold celestial path. Even under Buddha's 5 fingers, skin lasted approximately 500 years. Thus Dong sought body invulnerable to death. Managed to acquire cells even cruelest death arts performed by envoys of Land of Dead couldn't harm. Eventually even King of Underworld gave up killing him. System announced again drug been consumed. Properties of drug from Peach. Function. Create custom devices optimized for element. This how Parkle gained power he desired. Device responsible for various metabolic actions including neutralizing poisons. Parkle's new liver filled body from head to toe with cold water. Opening eyes, protagonist appeared completely different from before. Elder apparently noticing transformation, wondered how Parkle acquired water energy. Realized he made grave mistake. Parkle turns out was irregular. Parkle himself didn't understand how it happened. For now, just glad he wasn't feeling hot anymore. He picked up Nine-Tailed Fox Fan again, launching another attack at Elder. Man, completely in disbelief, struck by attack. Thus battle ended. Parkle collapsed to ground unconscious. Bear frantically urged him to open eyes. As Parkle slowly regained consciousness, Bear asked if he's back to senses. Bear remarked didn't want to discuss what happened. Questions if Parkle should leave place filled with water. Parkle, still confused, looked around. Realized entire area submerged in water. Couldn't comprehend what's going on. Checking Elder's body, Parkle muttered he'd heard about flag that acted as remote control for barrier. Wonders where it is. Observing situation, Parkle seemed surprised. Found kind of red talisman. Bear said it's treasure pouch. In summary, magical bag created to store small and large items. Bear reminded Parkle this no time playing around. Bet several people heading toward location. As Parkle carried Man on back, Bear asked where on earth he's going. Realizing dropped Man on ground, Bear questioned what Parkle's thinking. Bear warned if they stayed there, others might discover location of tree. Starting to cast spell, Parkle calmly asked Bear to relax. Using magic, Parkle seemed planning something to deceive pursuers. Bear, astonished by what witnessing, thought Parkle absorbing upper Taoist body into tree to germinate new bloom of fruit. Parkle commented luckily they weren't too late. Noticing more people approaching, remarked they'd completed task just in time. Bear explained peach tree blossomed, opening barrier. That's why hadn't been found yet. Bear grumbled its shame. If Taoist hadn't been fire element, another fruit could have grown from tree. Taking advantage of discussion about fruit, Parkle asked if it had special medicinal effects. Bear responded he didn't know. Being such precious treasure, only few people had knowledge of true nature. Since nothing changed in Parkle, Bear speculated perhaps fruit wasn't fully matured. That's why hadn't had effect yet. Parkle thought if he could truly enhance power through liver, water energy could increase. Much to consider about that. Wondered what would happen if ate fruit cultivated for long time. Bear seemed to want to ask something. Inquired if boy could show him what outside world's like. Parkle questioned if possible for deity to leave mountain. Bear explained he just needed to share alter ego. Bear needed power to do that. Parkle thought Bear would cling to him like gum. Bear said he had no other way to implode and follow Parkle. Now that paths crossed, Bear said he could see world and good things through him. Observing situation, Parkle seemed to accept Bear's offer. In return, demanded something Bear had. Without hesitation, Bear handed over weapon to young man. As Parkle examined it, Bear began explaining for long time, including across Korean peninsula, there'd been presence appeared throughout East Asia. Presence was fantasy race with intellectual abilities called goblins. Not only did they possess excellent basic skills but also had spiritual physique. Nature remarkable. Had exclusive weapons that refined abilities. These were goblins' helmet and club. As Parkle continued examining weapon, asked if he could use it. Thoughtbook said only original owner could wield it. Bearer confirmed true but added its important treasure that could be exchanged with goblin for anything. Helmet and club not items that could be crafted twice. Losing either one meant owner lost half their power. Parkle remarked if Bear still had it, meant he didn't even know who original owner was. From what Bear said, Parkle thought it didn't sound bad. Accepting club, Parkle said they'd start traveling together. Made Bear happy. Parkle said now should focus on working for Lady of Garden. Before that, would collect special items from unconscious people around. With upcoming H2G22 summit scheduled for 31st of that month, government made special plans to meet privately with heads of high-ranking states. Man mentioned he'd heard summit's reason related to something called Tower of Marbling. Parkle corrected Man. Called Babel. Tower of Babel, unprecedented structure built by ancient humans to reach heavens. Although differed slightly from myth of past, Tower existed long before heaven's gates were closed. In current dynasty of immortals, to be rebuilt according to Babylon's design. If Tower were rebuilt through project, all world's languages could be disrupted. Clear this to have advantages but consequences also significant. 4-1. Many businesses built around translations. Parkle thought to himself, this another global story unrelated to him. Concluding world had nothing to do with him. In instant, accident occurred. Quickly Parkle got up questioning what just happened. Surprised by what saw. Girl from before standing in front of car, ordering him to get out. She introduced herself as Jack Yambi. Mentioned she'd been asked to help him for a moment. However, if he involved her in stupidity, would regret it. Boy promised be careful not to do that. Shortly after, Bear now transformed into part of phone case muttered girl's name again. Whispered protagonist in for rough time. Parkle asked if Bear knew girl. Bear replied knew her just little. Asked if Parkle wanted to know her weakness. Explained girl simply adored handsome men. Leaves Parkle completely confused. Long time ago on Jeju Island, Mong Dorian, son of deity called Mun, famous for beauty. Jack Shumi, however, ordinary girl. Encountered man while he bathed. As result, spiritual physique awakened. Despite heaven's gates being closed. Returning to present, Parkle couldn't believe story. Seemed too impossible. Bear remarked sometimes people awaken when body and mind experience great shock. These individuals chosen, nurtured by deities in human world. Since Jack Zami had same celestial physique as Mun family, other man accepted her offer. Thus Jack Shumi pursued young man. Clear Mun didn't recognize girl who's immortal without patron. Girl completely furious questions why wouldn't have reasons to be acknowledged. For that reason, vowed to give Mun enough reasons to notice her. In less than 100 years, Jack Shanmi conquered Jeju Island. Became known as chosen flower who'd reach heavens, sweep across world. After establishing dynasty, Jack XAM formally proposed marriage to Mun. Father fearing girl's power devised way to banish her. As she prepared for wedding dreaming of happy future, was betrayed. On wedding day, conspiracy unfolded against her. Assassins came to kill poor girl. Not beloved but murderers armed and ready. In rage, beautiful woman destroyed everyone who conspired against her. Even though they used deadly surflower of extinction technique, couldn't escape. Thus battle of that day became known as Great Battle that almost sank island. But in end, she's only one who lost. For that day, betrayed by own love. Aiming to use abilities, some regions tried to approach her. Sent young handsome men as rumors said she liked that. But none could escape death. Bear asked Parkle if didn't feel relieved considering girl had no reason to hate him. After all, protagonist wasn't exactly handsome. Irritated Parkle who asked if Bear wanted to be sent back to mountain. Shortly after, girl asked what Parkle's doing. Already arrived at destination. Climbing stairs, Parkle apologized for earlier incident. Girl explained there were 6 gardens in castle, each numbered 1 to 6. Among them, only place Parkle could stay was 6th garden. Parkle assumed 6th was worst. Didn't expect access to precious medicinal herbs right away. Even so, shocked by what saw. Couldn't believe there were 2 suns in that place. Questioned why such place so miserable. Girl explained each gate had different space-time, different realm within that world. From now on, protagonist would be lord of that place, responsible for cultivating crops. Parkle asked who previous leader was. Girl questioned if he really thought there'd been one. Place been closed since death of last lord 100 years ago. Young man thought as world changed and number of mortals increased, value of herbs rose due to increased demand. Girl mentioned just because Parkle's in that place doesn't mean he won't be well paid. When harvest time approached, could make lot of money, especially since no other gardeners. Shortly after, girl bid him farewell. Parkle's phone suddenly started ringing, causing him to drop it. As result, phone's wallpaper became invisible. In that moment, flashback of what Bear said earlier flooded Parkle's mind. He quickly muttered he respected girl. Later, Parkle opened eyes. Bear munching on something, remarking Parkle finally woken up. Noted boy been out nearly 2 hours. Parkle asked what happened. Bear replied it's clean hit. First time seen someone perform such move without using technique. Even though 6th gardens worst among others, only carefully selected seeds cultivated there. Bear suggested Parkle should take advantage. Parkle reflected girl said she'd observe while place maintained until next harvest. If demonstrated skill, might request cultivation of more valuable plants. For example, peaches he ate before or perhaps something even more precious. Considered using sixth garden to further strengthen himself. Wouldn't let anyone touch it or harm family in this world of untamed mortals. To achieve that, first needed to do something about wasteland before him. Looking around, realized place complete mess. Reaching into backpack, found belongings completely burned. Already knew that, overused them in last battle. Mentioned sword saved life countless times. Thanked it for all done. Bear observed Parkle astonished by how sincerely prayed. Just plant but could let up sky without regret. At that moment, sword transformed into giant tree. Roots began enveloping entire area. Bear shocked wondered how such thing possible. Thought burned spirit would take at least month to restore, but happened so quickly. Parkle ordered other trees to rise using ability. Summoned wooden monsters. Instructed them to handle agricultural tasks. Group started analyzing trees. Bear remarked incredible Parkle summoned living spirits of trees. Something even high-ranked immortals struggled to do. Parkle said needed to rest now. Used lot of energy. While entering house, marveled at how much larger than imagined. Sat down to meditate. Thinks needs to regain energy using breathing techniques. Soon became completely focused. Suddenly stood up. Certain he felt plant responding to breathing. Supposed might be under floor. Decided to use remaining seeds to uncover whatever it was. Began digging into ground. Leaves Bear utterly surprised, asking what boy's doing. Something appeared among rubble. Suddenly explosion occurred. Parkle shocked analyzed what been buried underground. Questioned what red circle is. Bear explained its blood barrier. Whoever made it must have held immense uncommon resentment. Parkle thought pulse been coming from beneath. Wanted to break circle. Began attacking barrier. To astonishment, uncovered secret chamber beneath ground. Chamber belonged to Parkle, ward of 6th Garden, also known by some. From then on, next Lord of 6th Garden would tell of atrocities committed by Lady of Castle. One day on way home after parting with friend, he accidentally wandered into shrine. Guardian deity there been possessed by ghost. At time, unable to do much, kind scholar passing by helped him. Scholar successfully exorcised ghost. After doing so, man mentioned Parkle would soon be fine. However, if ghost latched onto him, meant spiritual physique awakening. Meant if remained in human world in this state, would either be pursued by immortals or tormented by wandering spirits. No need to worry. Scholar knew of immortal who could guide him. Following Scholar's advice, Parkle entered pavilion of Lady of Castle. She said if cultivated moral sense, dedicated to practice, could transcend. Since born as immortal, would be like trying to grasp star in night sky. Without making progress, that boy did work everywhere. Eventually debt kept increasing. At that point, thought nothing more could do about it. Wasn't case. When nearing 30, met child like him. Came from human world with own spiritual physique awakened. Circumstances that brought child there so shocking. However, same way man came to that place. Realized truly been possessed by ghost. Not because stepped into temple of tutelary deity but because scholar placed ghosts on him to awaken spiritual physique. Thus that boy merely been pawn on chessboard. After realizing, understood couldn't live whole life as servant. Bowed head to anyone who mastered earth art, begged to be trained. Even after gathering and learning all that, mortal body which had no power grew weak as aged. In that state, given nickname, they called him Foxtail Grass. Whenever bounded due to hard work, they said looked like grass that grew everywhere. So received that pseudonym. When that happened, truly thought about end of life. Felt utterly powerless. Then miracle occurred. That lady rewarded him with gratitude for sacrificing so much. The ward of the 6th Garden vowed never to forget her grace. He'd been chosen as lord, and he swore to fulfill his duties until death. He dedicated himself to mastering the earth dragon art of the 6th Garden. His power grew daily until he reached the verge of becoming an immortal mystic. But even with all that strength, his body grew weaker. That's when he understood the secret. The Earth Dragon arts effects were excellent, but they were being absorbed by the medicinal herbs surrounding him. Without realizing it, he'd become living fertilizer. His life wouldn't last much longer. Reading this, Parkle's shocked. He's only seen this kind of thing on TV. Immortals are actually capable of this? Although he'd suspected something, he's got nothing in common with what's described here. The bear says it's common practice. Immortals use these acts to maintain the immortal realm. Parkle wonders if he could end up like that man. If someone has the ability to break through the barrier created with his blood, that person's capable and exceptional enough to burn down the cursed pavilion. For juniors in the same situation, he should escape with the stolen treasure, risking his life to protect it. Parkle wonders if these things belong to the people mentioned in that testament. Looking through the contents, he realizes they're mandake seeds cultivated by people of color across the oceans. Picking up another object, he asks what it is. The book doesn't mention it. The bear responds it's like a container where temple people draw lots. Parkle's surprised. The beats he's been hearing weren't coming from the seed but from that object. Should he use them to cultivate something? An explosion occurs. The objects resist growing along with him. Picking up the object again, he asks what it is. Feels familiar. Is it a blade shaft? The bear reveals it's a sword. Meanwhile, the lady's analyzing something. She remarks that the man indeed traveled to that place. A girl appears, saying she knows this is rude but they must act first, it's urgent. She's heard Yano had a treasure in her main palace. That's why she wants it returned. The seven-branched sword's very strange, valuable even where it was made. That place originally was a country that couldn't establish itself. Among the three kingdoms, only Beeksh didn't have enough power to support a nation's creation. Scylla was created first by a man with irregular physique. Goguryeo was created by a saint, the son of the previous lady, with blessings of the ancestral spirits of the Korean peninsula. King Junchogo raised that man through human power. Without supernatural ability or past, he eventually awakened his mundane physique, belatedly acquired the gold element. He mastered martial art, learned to manage energy on his own. Though human, King Junchogo was a rare genius. That man was at his peak due to the king's abilities. Over time, lack of skill and subsequent kings caused Beeksh to decline. Even traces of its existence faded over years. But one thing remains standing. He's compared to genius King Junchogo, a saint prince who extended Beeksh's power to the continent and the Wa. The seven-branched sword's a masterpiece created by the saint prince, a precious item ranked among great sacred artifacts. Returning to present, the woman asks if they received the blade before. The girl responds that's all they know so far. In the past, there was a record that when the king was about to present the sword to the celestial king, a messenger carrying it died of natural causes. Fortunately, the ship carrying the sword was recovered safely, but the blade was never delivered to its country. The lady questions if the girl's implying the seven-branched sword possesses some kind of axis. Very strange. It seems she realized an axis's existence long ago. Why's the girl inquiring about it only now? The girl replies she hasn't come to ask meaningless questions. In the sanctuary's name, she's there to propose a celestial lease for 6 months. Understanding the situation, the lady of the garden asks what the conditions are. The other woman states they'll wager the blade of the seven-branched sword. In the middle of that battle, if they don't win, they'll be allowed to take something from the lady's property. If the axis of the seven-branched sword's found there, she promises not to take anything else. Shortly after, the lady accepts the offer. Asks to add one more condition. 6 months pass. A group's discussing the matter. They're planning to broadcast the next celestial fight in real time. The lady herself said she'd reveal it. Another man asks why they'd broadcast it. While entertaining to watch, they're almost at the 6th garden. Should avoid causing discord with the Lord. While approaching their progress, refrain from making any trouble during the visit. Later, the group arrives. They're completely surprised by what's inside. The place was once desolated. The protagonists in the background eating while reading a book. Noticing guests have arrived, the young man seems shocked by what the protagonist's doing. He's relaxed and eating while observing them. Asks Parkle to at least show some respect in their presence. Parkle quickly stands up, greets them. Mentions his name's Parkle, Lord of the Six Garden. The other boy introduces himself. His name's Lee. He's there to report the garden's progress. Showing a system window on his phone, Parkle asks why his juniors insist on calling him their senior. Realizing the boy's a celestial immortal, everyone's shocked. Parkle asks if a celestial fight's about to take place. They confirm that's what they said. Even the Supreme Immortal, along with 2 players from each ranking, would participate from the Japanese side. Parkle remarks he hasn't heard of such an event. He doesn't go out often. Asks if the boy's going to circle around there. Lee quickly responds things turned out that way. The boy's name's Lee Woon. During the Korean War, he awakened his spiritual physique after the shock of losing his family in a bombing. Later he joined the Pavilion of the Lady. Although he could be downgraded, he still possesses skills. A talented person who's shown intensely after meeting a true master. Parkle thinks he can't trust most immortals, but that boy seems different from all others. He immediately apologized earlier for his servant's bad behavior. Parkle remarks he can't believe he's going to participate in the celestial fight. Bets he's the strongest immortal. The boy says although he's still weak, the lady gave him the opportunity to participate in that grand event. There are very strong contenders there. For example, one named Go, who's nearly a pure immortal, said to be related to the bloodline of the lady's son. He mentions he's lucky to be in a celestial fight against someone like him. Parkle seems to be analyzing that boy from earlier. The group associated with the ladies discussing something. The sanctuary accepted their proposal, but mortals support them so much because they killed some creatures. If they play an active role in this matter of national pride, they'll receive more donations and praise than that girl who previously slain a creature. Another woman appears to interrupt the conversation. The Lord of the Six Garden went to meet her. The lady asks to keep him waiting. They're having a family meeting. The woman says the protagonist said something that greatly angered her. Standing up, another boy becomes furious. Questions if that newcomer dared to challenge him. The lady says in her view, it's not bad to deal with the protagonist. There's a rumor he stayed in the celestial rank on purpose because he's afraid to compete with others. If the boy doesn't like that kind of rumor circulating, he should accept the challenge and show his best skills. Observing the situation, the lady of the garden says the woman's right. Asks if he could defeat that boy. The young man seems reluctant. Later, the two are already in a duel with the lady and several others watching the battle. The boy glares at the protagonist, tells him not to blame him if he burns in agony. Surprised, Parkle thinks the young man's staring at him with murderous intent. The judge announces the battle can begin. The young man starts throwing various spells at Parkle. In defense, the protagonist uses his magic. The other boy asks if Parkle thought he could stop his attack with just a shield of leaves. That shield can't even hold its own petals. He'll never let him have fun with that ability again. He begins summoning a kind of magical meteor. With a threatening look, he declares it's the end for Parkle. The protagonist seems fearless, also preparing a spell. Says it'll be opposite. He'll be the one to kill the boy. In an instant, the two spells collide. The protagonist's magic easily blocks the boy's, leaving him completely shocked. The shields absorbing his power. A giant explosion begins to engulf the area. A man appears in the middle of the battle, apologizing for his interference. Before the protagonist stands an unknown man who says he can't let a child die. He already knows who the winner is. The boy protests, says he can still fight. The man shouldn't interfere in the battle. The man replies he's sure the victory belongs to the protagonist. His talents would never disgrace the pavilion. Observing the situation, the lady remains silent. States she accepts the outcome. The man's words carry weight, and the protagonist's talents are indeed valuable. Shortly after, the lady calls for Parkle. The boy's watching the man, wondering who he is. Later, the lady's discussing with Parkle. Asks what kind of training he's done over the past 6 months. Parkle replies due to the nature of the earth element and the growing pace of martial arts, Training's been very fast. He knows the lady brought him to cultivate something. If she wants, she can simply order him. He's doing that right now. He assures her she can trust him. He doesn't want to betray her. The lady remarks his words are very bold. Asks if he's been planning that from the beginning. Asks him to stay in the competition for now. She'll think of 2 places for him. As Parkle's about to leave, he mentions he has one last question. Questions if he could leave for a while. Later, Parkle seems to be walking alongside the man from earlier. He thinks when the lady mentioned he'd have a companion, he didn't expect it to be this man. Parkle asks if he could know the man's name. The man replies his name's Dan Diok, but Parkle can call him Rim if he wants. Parkle thinks unlike the first time he appeared, this man's indeed quite flexible. Looking to the side, Parkle asks if the man by any chance wanted to have a drink at that moment. Later, the two seem to be enjoying themselves while walking. The man says even though he knew about such things, the situations in the human world are incomparable to the immortal realm. The protagonist's pleased. Mentions he's happy because Ron's enjoying himself. Remarks he's heard that immortals sometimes visit the human world. Asks if he's ever been there. The man responds yes. When he died in the human world, he became an immortal with the lady's help. He was devastated when he discovered he'd live in the immortal world and not the human one. Observing the situation, Parkle thinks this man must have had many regrets in the human world. He achieved so much in life. Continuing, the man says he once told the human world his name, wanted everyone to remember him at least after his death. But now thinking back, it was an unrealized dream from his immature days. While living in the immortal realm, he couldn't stop thinking about things he lost. He deeply regretted what he hadn't done, but in the end it's just part of his past. Mentions it's a long speech. Thanks Parkle for listening. Says thanks to him he could enjoy a tour of the human world once again. In the background, a group of people seem to be holding a sort of protest, demanding the Dragon King stops human sacrifices for that year. Observing the situation, Rim asks if Parkle understands what he's seeing. Says he can't believe the country's leaders sacrificing his people. Furious, Rim declares they should go find the country's leader. The protagonist asks them to wait a moment. A sort of black circles above them. Supposes it could be a solar eclipse. But a threatening aura begins to envelop the area. An explosion occurs. Desperate, many people start running for their lives. Amidst the darkness, a man remarks those beings don't know their place. In rage, Parkle charges at the man, attacking him with a tool from earlier. Seemingly defeats him. In the background, he hears voices pleading to be saved. At that moment, Parkle's struck by something. The person says they didn't expect to find him in a place like that. Mentions the protagonists wandering in the wrong world. For that reason, they'll take his life. Sensing the energy, Parkle says the man's an agent of Mikusa or something similar. Thinks he recognizes that energy, finds it unpleasant. The woman felt it ever since the statue was destroyed. Additionally, the man's openly displaying his intention to kill. Parkle asks if he's perhaps close to the man he just defeated. Says the man can say whatever he wants. No matter what happens, he'll pay for crimes he's committed in his life. Parkle asks what crimes he's committed. He begins casting a spell again, which envelopes the entire area. States the one who needs to pay for his crimes is him. Immediately, several wooden figures appear, beginning to approach the man and defeating all his henchmen. The woman asks what they're doing. Orders them to release the phantoms right away. They should tear the man limb from limb. Shortly after, the phantoms, also known as ghosts, are unleashed, moving toward the protagonist. Parkle thinks he hasn't expected to use this, but he's glad he bought the short pipe at the market. He immediately begins consuming the drug. As a result, his strength and muscle endurance improved along with his concentration. At that moment, Parkle grabs the kind of root. Mentions he won't miss them at all. Starts executing them one by one. The woman says it doesn't matter how many ghost trees resist. It's like poking a rock with a toothpick. Demands to know what her subordinates are doing. Orders them to release more phantoms to trap the protagonist once and for all. In a matter of seconds, blood starts pouring from her mouth. All her subordinates fall to the ground. As they writhe in agony, They cry out for help from anyone. Parkle, surprised, observes the situation. Asks if she really thought he was crazy enough to use a sword against her. Watching the smoke, the woman thinks it could be what she's assuming. Parkle says he used that drug to detoxify his body, but for everyone else the smoke's extremely toxic. Mentions this ability's quite terrifying. In her final words, the woman seems to call out to her father. At that very moment, an explosion occurs. A man asks if the word she uttered was father. Another man holds the first man, asking if she's referring to that person. Observing that young man, the protagonist thinks he's the celestial god Mikusa. Shortly after, the man throws the other guy to the ground. He asks who these people are, doing this to them. Questions if they know who he is. The protagonist's friend says it doesn't matter who he is. The point is he committed an unforgivable sin against the people. The young man starts laughing. Says he's been wondering what kind of nonsense they're talking about. Asks them to remember that before going to hell. Thanks to his curiosity, he won't let any immortal survive. Parkle thinks he's not just absorbing the dead bodies but also taking their strength. Wonders why they're using innocent people for such purposes. Mentions the man's art's extremely powerful. He doesn't know how he'll be able to stop it. Wonders if perhaps he should use the nine-tailed fox fan. But he's not sure if it'll work yet. He's got no other choice. The other man says it's an ancient art. Can't believe the blood reincarnations present in the human world. Asks if the protagonist could perhaps lend him his sword. In the middle of that situation, the man seems extremely focused. Shortly after, the protagonist hands him the weapon. He makes a cut, managing to split that sphere in half. He says he's got no right to punish him for sins against innocent people simply because he belongs to the immortal realm. However, the crime of taking lives of other immortals and making sacrifices for his powers unforgivable. For that reason, a member of the immortal realm should take responsibility and punish him. Begins performing a series of cuts on the young man who in a matter of seconds is killed. As a result of Immortal Society's swift action, the terrorists were arrested. The terrorism suspects were from an organization called Rio Abram. Meanwhile, that lady seems to be watching the news. A man's giving his opinion on TV. Mentions Immortal Society did nothing. In the end, only managed to film the scene. Says they just need to watch that video. Those two were their former heroes. The identities of the protagonist and his friend appeared on television. The presenters say that person's extremely familiar. Asks if they remember him. He's the hero who appeared a year and a half ago. The one who decapitated the giant bird from before. Sometime later, that man's apologizing to his lady. Mentions he's not qualified to belong to the immortal realm. Whatever punishment's given to him, he won't avoid it. The lady asks Parkle if after doing all that, he still dares to look her in the eyes. At that moment, the protagonist bows, apologizing for the inconvenience. Thinks the girl doesn't even seem angry. The lady asks the man to raise his head. Says she won't claim his actions were wrong, but rather she's reprimanding him to be more cautious. Tells Parkle to prepare for disciplinary action. Shortly after, she dismisses them both. Sometime later, Parkle seems to have returned to his garden. Feels as though he's been away from it for days. Says he can finally see it again. He grabs some notes, thinking he hasn't expected to find what was hidden in the statue from before. Mentions he doesn't think it had any special power. Shortly after, the bear appears on top of his head. Asks if that's not King Sejong's handwriting. The protagonist asks if that family did something wrong to the bear. The spirit, angry, says it's thanks to that family he's in this form. Parkle seems to be analyzing the scroll. Doesn't seem to have anything special about it. Thinks without a doubt, the one who wrote that was certainly King Sejong. In the writing, it says he knows he doesn't have much time left to live, but even so he's not afraid of anything. The one thing he fears is seeing his son close his eyes before him. The rest of his worries are about the people he'll leave behind. Seeing that Hayoung's losing weight day by day due to a deity's curse, that's why he's concerned that after he and his friend die, someone protected by the immortals might seize power over the state. Could lead to that land being covered in blood and tears of innocent people. Long ago, Many lives were lost because of the deities. Before that happens again, the era of immortals treating the human world as a mere plaything, those who haven't awakened their spiritual physique would also need power to confront the immortals. There's a distant war in the northwest, and some letters called runes. It said if all were combined, it'd reveal their true power. Functions like a verse with power within the letters. If someone could create a text with them, they could accomplish something incredible. Parkle says perhaps he's trying to create a language system similar to the Draco Bone script. The bear says the cleverness of that child was famous even in the immortal realm. If he'd lived another year, he would have achieved that. The protagonist quickly says he believes the man accomplished that feat. Continuing to read, the writing says if anyone's good at reading and writing, they should just learn how to activate it. That way, anyone could end up using the power of the letters. His final wish is that those 28 characters wouldn't disappear from the world so people could easily achieve their goals. Reading the content of that book, the boy's pleased. Congratulating the person who's already dead, states the future the great king desired became a reality. The boy uses his abilities. The wooden blocks begin to levitate. The young man's amazed by his attack power. All of this is due to the power of words and sounds suited for instructing the people. They'd said if you could imagine the words in your mind, you could use them just by reciting. The protagonist says the word, burn. The objects begin to catch fire. Parkle's amazed by what he's seeing. Gets excited and continues to burn the objects. That little bear appears again, wondering who's making so much noise. Startled, he asks why the young man's playing with fire in broad daylight. Jumps on the boy's head, asking how someone who couldn't even create fire without him found a way to create it. The boy needs to be careful so the fire won't spread. Parkle thinks about how when he says the word louder, the fire grows stronger. Or if he speaks louder, the more it'll consume him. He falls silent to think about the matter. Concludes if he can make a long and meaningful word, he could create something more powerful and effective. Parkle takes a deep breath and shouts, telling the sky to lament and cry as much as it wants. Continues to shout the word, sky, multiple times. Nothing happens. The boy says saying that out loud's a bit embarrassing. Then he notices he's not alone. Someone's smiling after witnessing the whole situation. Embarrassed, the protagonist asks how long she's been there watching. The girl starts making jokes about his training. She says it's fine to do that. She respects it. Smiles at the young man, which makes him even more embarrassed. After that, Parkle asks why she's come there. The girl replies she'd heard he's entering the celestial battle. Asks if the protagonist beat Koiol. Comments he's improving quickly. Says she went out a bit to prepare for the battle and found something for the boy. Mentions she's supposed to be looking after him but hasn't been doing so lately. But it seems she doesn't need to anymore. She tosses something to the boy. Parkle asks what it is. The girl replies it's a scripture. They asked her to deliver it since he'd entered the celestial battle. The boy asks who made it. Sunbeam says it's been a sage, the protagonist's father. Leaves him completely shocked. He becomes irritated with the girl. Asks where she found this person who claimed to be his father. The girl replies she found him in a place called Shinbu. A long time ago, Huaneng descended from the heavens and gave mugwort and garlic to a bear and a tiger who wished to become human. Unlike the tiger who fled, the bear endured eating the root and became the human Ungnyo. Together, Huaneng and Ungnyo gave birth to Dangun Wangam and created a new history for Korea. That's the myth most people know. However, what's not remembered within this myth is that Ungnyo was not Huaneng's legitimate wife. Huaneng, along with his family, cultivated the sacred tree of life in a place in Korea where the heavens connected with the earth, governing a place called Shinbu. Sunbeam says the protagonist's father was married to Huaneng's youngest princess and resided in Shinbu. She explained she'd finished her work in Shinbu and was preparing to return when a man approached her. Said her son was in debt to the palace and would soon be in trouble. So he'd written something of vital importance. Not saying anything more after that. Parkle thinks his father abandoned his family and simply fled somewhere. He squandered the family's fortune for his own pleasure. The burden of accumulated debt was distributed to his mother and paternal grandmother. His father ignored all the blame. In the end, his grandmother died for nothing. Parkle grows serious, thinking his father found another family. His previous family meant nothing to him. Sunbeam asks him to open the box. It's truly a valuable item. When he opens it, the protagonist finds a sealed mystical bamboo fan. The scripture in the form of a fan's been created to tame and seal demonic beasts and evil spirits. A fan with 24 blades is considered high quality, but a fan with more than 48 blades is considered the best. Yet the fan the boy received has 72 blades. He wonders why his father gave him something so valuable. The girl mentions it's useful for absorbing evil spirits if he's interested in using it. Parkle says he'll cherish it. He won't find another way to get his hands on something so precious. Sunbeam smiles, realizing he's not walking an easy path. 8 hours before the competition, the protagonist senses an aura. Says it feels like someone's there. Deok appears walking. Surprised, Parkle asks what he's doing there. The young man says he came to make a request. He needs help crafting the Flute of Peace. It's known the first appearance of the flute was during the unified Silla, but the object's been conceived and created long before during the era of King Wongian. There was a man whom even the immortals couldn't stop, considered someone perfect. Because of this, the immortals lost their powers, allowing the Water Dragon King to cause a massive natural disaster leading to the sacrifice of many humans. In search of a solution to respond to the disasters, the three kingdoms temporarily united. The masters of the kingdoms created a celestial item, the Flute of Peace. However, the item was so powerful they placed 2 restrictions on it. First, it can't be taken out of the Korean peninsula. Second, it can't be used in a way that'd harm the people living there. Deok mentions the item was only used in Silla to defeat the mighty Water Dragon King and then simply disappeared. He says he came to the protagonist because he probably knew what's needed to create one. Sunbeam, because of the competition, the guards of the gardens would be reduced. So he plans to take the black jade bamboo from the second garden. But for the new Flute of Peace, they'll need the black bamboo no matter what. Lady Yua might become suspicious. As a consequence, there could be a new conflict with the Dragon Palace. Hearing this, Parkle thinks Deok would likely take full responsibility. The reason he wants to do this is probably because of the protest they saw in Guaman. But he realizes Deok's different from the other immortals. He says he'll help him. He also thought about the good of his people. Having someone like him willing to help's a good thing. It'd be terrible of him not to want to help. Deok's happy. Says he was sure the boy would join him. Says they should leave immediately. Upon arriving at the location, Parkle discovers it's a floating island. His companion explains it's an artificially created space by the pavilion. If they alter the structure's formula, they'll be able to enter, but it won't be easy. Deok throws a small wooden horse figurine which transforms into a beautiful black horse. Asks the boy to hold his hand as they ride through the skies. The young man says he won't let them touch the boy. This statement leaves him confused. Looking back, he sees they're being followed by flying sea monsters. Deok drops the young man on the island. Says he'll distract them. He rides off. Parkle realizes he'll also face problems there. Deciding to ingest the mandrake drug, he recalls the proper sounds for the instruction of the people. The longer and more meaningful the sentence, the better. He shouts the word, fast, and begins to run faster. Senses an unusual energy coming from 2 places. Thinks it'd be great if one of them were from the Black Jade Lake. Suddenly, he's attacked by a lizard monster. He dodges. Parkle's surprised. The creature seems stronger than a celestial immortal. If it had a wood attribute, he'd be at a disadvantage. The boy says he's already taken his drug, so it'd be hard for them to get past him. The creatures charge toward him. The protagonist shouts the word, appear. A brown bear appears. The lizards try to flee, but the bear continues to chase them. Tells the boy to keep waving his fan. The protagonist thinks it's no wonder he's called the god of the fire mountain among the great mountains. The evil spirits who command the mountains and have the word evil in their name are rare. Among all of them, there's only one that can control fire naturally. According to legend, people in the past believed the mountain's fire would spread throughout Seoul. To prevent that from happening, They created a lake around the mountain, suppressing the fire energy for years. The creatures flee. The bear asks the boy to help him. Parkle thinks it's strange they're running right toward that energy. After all, it's probably the Jade Lake providing nutrients to this island, given how well the plants grow there. From the top of a tree, the boy sees the lizards fleeing toward a turtle-shaped structure. He wonders if that's the Black Jade Lake. Seems to be just a stone. The little bear asks to be let down there. The boy responds he's never seen anything like it before. Asks if the bear won't regret it later. The animal replies it's curious. The boy waves the fan. The bear returns to being a massive brown bear. As it defeats the lizards, the beast remarks they're very weak. But from inside the cave, something observes the bear. It traps the bear in a water bubble. The bear asks for the protagonist's help. He bursts the bubble using his abilities. Parkle comments that must be the creature serving as fertilizer for the island. The little bear's surprised to see there really is a creature inside. The protagonist wonders if the creature's a imugi. If a baby's this size, imagine it as an adult. He's also surprised it's not a lake but a divine beast trapped to feed someone's ego. At least finally, the bear comments that while it may be a baby, it's around 2,000 years old. Seeing it use that technique uncontrollably, it seems like it doesn't know the basics. While holding his fan, Parkle says it's good for the bear. Frightened, the small animal asks what he's talking about. The boy waves his fan, says he'll give the bear a jar of honey later to make up for it. He traps both creatures inside his fan. Inside the item, the creature fights with the brown bear. Parkle's pleased to see both fit inside. Closes his fan, says it's time to leave. While walking with Deok, the boy thanks him. They manage to leave safely thanks to his help. The protagonist wonders why Deok seems so out of breath. He notices his companion's bleeding. Deok tells him not to worry. He just needs to rest for a while to recover. Still, Parkle's concerned. Knows they'll have to fight in a few hours. Deok hands something to the protagonist, explaining its payment for helping him fulfill a difficult task. Elaborates the item was crafted by twin dragons living in the Garden of Flowers, but he wishes he could give more of his own things. This was all he could manage to secure. The boy stays silent, observing the situation. Deok tells him not to look so solemn. He deserves much more than just that. Parkle reflects on how his mission's far from over since he still needs to create the flute of peace. He thinks perhaps a situation may arise where they won't be able to escape Yua's grasp. The young man helps Deok walk, suggesting they leave. Deok smiles, says he knew the boy wouldn't be prideful. Both leave the place smiling. Parkle thinks Deok's a strong person, both as a divine being and as a human. He promises to become strong enough one day to confidently call him brother. People begin arriving for the competition. The announcer informs the crowd they're in Dokdo in the Eastern Ocean. The fight hasn't even started, but they can already feel the strong energy among competitors. Next, it's explained the competition will function similarly to previous ones where there'll only be one winner between two teams. Some are worried this year's competition isn't balanced because the opponents come from different worlds. Parkle watches Deok, thinking about how he didn't even seem injured a few hours ago. Before the competition begins, representatives from each country send a message of greeting to the Water Dragon King, asking for his understanding as the competition will be held in his domain. Some women prepare to transform part of the waters between the Korean peninsula and Japan. The two islands connect. This is the power of the sages. Thanks to them, the power of the water dragon has synchronized, creating a new space. The higher-ups chose the participants. They were examined to meet the conditions set by each representative. A masked figure introduces herself as Sarah. Says she'll judge the competition with fairness and honor until a winner's decided. Promises to protect Yua with her life. A second masked figure appears, introducing himself as Odin. Also states he'll judge the competition with fairness and honor. Promises to protect the 7 branches with his life until a victor's chosen. Suddenly, the protagonist's bag begins to glow. The boy thinks the masked man must be carrying the sword that holds the power of the 7 branches. It's reacting to the axis. The box containing the sword opens. The item seems to come to life. Odin contains it, apologizing. Explains the sword has a competitive spirit and goes mad when it senses a worthy opponent. But it was strange for it to react this way when the sword's owner doesn't even exist. Odin apologizes for disrupting the competition. Yua comments if the broken sword carries the divine power of the blacksmith, the man should know the level of that spirit. Parkle thinks the item must be the broken sword. Named that way because the blade's so strong it breaks any other. It said it was made from the bones of Valhalla's humans, which were strong and had significant combat power. The young man realizes the sword's power must have been contained by the masked man. If he hadn't stopped it, the sword might have gone toward him due to its synchronization with his axis. The man must have sensed someone there had enough power to make the sword react. Next, it's announced Lee Woon will be the first to participate. He'll face a celestial immortal. Someone sits next to the protagonist. Says it's a pity. The persons go hi and ha. The boy asks what's a pity. The girl replies if he continues watching, he'll find out. She hates explaining things. When the protagonist looks at the arena, Lee Woon's opponent summons a Kamaitachi. The weasel charges at the boy. He blocks the attack and tries to counter the celestial immortal. But before he could attempt anything, Kamaitachi returned and managed to strike the boy, leaving the protagonist startled by what he's witnessing. Parkle thinks about how that celestial immortal adapted and grew stronger within seconds. Go Hyen Ha smiles. Asks if the young man understood. Remarks he's probably wondering how the opponent's winning without using any weapons. However, even if he doesn't win, the boy should at least consider that on the other side, energy itself's also a weapon. This competition also serves as a demonstration of the difference between Korean and Japanese abilities. Even the royal family's watching. The secret purpose of the competition's to create a performance that'll stay in their memory. It's an opportunity to regain the dignity of the Go family and showcase it to the world. Yua wants to show the world an image of Koreans defeating the Japanese. At first, Lee was just another piece. The boy managed to stand up after the Kamaitachi attacks. Lee Woon's taken severe damage from his opponent's attack. His physical conditions deteriorating rapidly. The wound inflicted by the Kamaitachi caused him to bleed profusely. This prompts the tournament's narrator to question whether the Koreans will lose in the very first match. Lee Woon attempts a counterattack. Before he could do anything, he's once again easily struck by the weasels. As a result, the boy's left even more injured and collapses to the ground, unable to stand any longer. The narrator announces the first match ended in a victory for the Japanese. Go Hyen Ha turns to Parkle. Asks if he shouldn't be happy since thanks to the young man, the Japanese won't have high expectations. She confidently states the boy could win his battle. Explains they have to be the best in order to stand out. Parkle stands up. Says he'll do his best. Adds he's sure he'll win. As he enters the arena, the announcer points out the boys become famous due to Yua and the incident at Guaman. The same celestial immortal who defeated Lee Woon sneers. Says another fool's coming his way. Remarks how weak these people are. Parkle quickly dashes for the young man, delivering a punch to his face. Everyone watching the fight stunned by what they just witnessed. Parkle defeated his Japanese opponent with a single blow. Some banners shout for him to be careful. Charging in like that could be dangerous. Deok says in his opinion, the young man's move was clean and efficient. The girl questions whether efficiency means throwing oneself at the enemy without any defense. How could that be considered a battle technique? Deok responds it's indeed a technique. That's how the protagonist learned to fight. Parkle consumes one of his drugs, gaining a vitality boost in his cells and increasing blood production in his body. The boy thinks using it'll make him more resilient, but it'd be better if he'd use something with a hematic agent. Another Japanese opponent enters the ring. Parkle glares at her with a murderous look, which makes the girl nervous. Yet she states she won't go easy on him. She summons giant samurai statues. The boy figures his opponents using those to avoid close combat. He clenches his fist. Seeing this, the girl thinks he'll use the same punch as before, but she's prepared for that. One of her statues is grabbed by a wooden giant. The girl realizes the boy can also summon a familiar. The protagonist declares he'll handle this the Korean way. He decides to use the ability, the sounds of power, and begins with a military sound. He sings a Korean military song. The people wonder why he's singing that. Parkle recites a verse from the song which urges them not to fear retreating and to face the enemy. States the country's fates in their hands. After hearing that, the wooden giants attack one of the samurai. The girl tries to stop, but the giant's head's crushed. Parkle smiles, pleased his plan worked. Everyone around's amazed by what they've seen. Parkle's won 2 matches in a row. The announcer mentions 2 Japanese immortal level opponents have already been defeated. Now there's a match against a pure immortal opponent. They should see if Parkle can win again. Observing a man on the battlefield, people speculate he could be a shinobi. Parkle thinks the man's aura's certainly different from that of a celestial immortal. Assuming this indeed a pure immortal. Quickly, the man throws some kunai at the protagonist, who swiftly summons his wooden dolls to defend himself. An explosion happens. Once again, that man attacks the boy who barely manages to dodge the attack. Those kunai explode again, throwing the boy into the air. The man, about to strike again, is met by Parkle casting a spell to avoid the attack. Says the man almost sliced him in half. Because of that, he needs to respond with much more strength. Casts a spell at the shinobi. Irritated, the bear says the protagonist left him alone with a man. Parkle only smiles. He asks who that shinobi is and why he wants to face the boy. The protagonist says he'll explain the details later. Looking at the man's clothes, he notices he bears the crest of the Suzuki clan. Few people wear the pride of the 3-like crow. For that reason, the bear says he'll take out his anger on the shinobi instead of the protagonist. Mentions a pure immortal's no match for him. He begins launching a series of attacks at the shinobi, whose armor seems to be melting. Satisfied, the bear remarks if things continue like this, he can win easily. Attempting to land his final blow, the bear says he'll end the fight. At that moment, Parkle asks him to wait. In a matter of seconds, something strange starts to happen. That melted armor begins to move toward the bear. It's not steel armor but rather magic using malleable steel. Calling out for help from the protagonist, the bear says he needs cold energy. At that moment, the boy seems to have an idea. Says he'll help and soon send cold energy to him. Observing this, the spirit remarks the energy feels familiar. Appearing surprised by something, suddenly a gigantic spirit standing before him. The bear, desperate, asks who sent that spirit there. Begs it to release him. The announcers watching the scene are utterly shocked. Mention the protagonist's techniques lighting up the entire area. Shortly after, the shinobi appears in tears, staring intensely at Parkle. Thinks it should be enough. Losing's already humiliating and the man seems tired. He's probably going to surrender. It's not the shinobi who speaks but a woman beside him. An intimidating aura begins to surround the woman. Says it's just a fight, to be precise, an event created peacefully between both sides. She doesn't think they need to risk the lives of 2 talents over this. Parkle, observing the situation, remains silent. The protagonist's 2 companions watch the scene. He thinks this means he's someone who can't die there. Mentions the man someone's sick kuwu lent to the sanctuary. The lady says she feels ashamed. She felt pity for one of the participants and thus interfered in the fight between them. For that reason, they've got the right to withdraw their participant from the fight. Observing this, Parkle seems surprised. Yua, thanking them for their efforts, states the young man won 3 times in a row. Because of this, she couldn't imagine he possessed such incredible skills and items. Parkle thinks even if she tries to compliment him, it's still quite humiliating. Says he could have done much better if he'd been notified of the event earlier. The woman asks what he's talking about. Parkle says thanks to her, perhaps he's gained more attention from the mortals. Asks if she thought that as an awakened one, they were just a bunch of idiots. That shinobi with a threatening look watches the situation. Looking at the man, Parkle thinks he feels sorry for him. Shortly after, he meets up with another girl who says he's done a good job. Mentions it's a shame. The protagonist says it's fine. The girl clarifies she's not talking about Parkle. On variety shows, people like him are called producers. Even though they have skills, they could be discarded in seconds. Parkle did best and could have done much more, but it's better for the image of that boy because Parkle graciously gave up with him. The protagonist thinks if this were soccer, it'd be like taking out a strong player who'd definitely win the game. He's certain the audience won't celebrate this decision given the drama that's unfolded so far. So the boy says he doesn't think she knows about those things. She responds, "You don't see much of that nowadays, but people talk a lot about it on social media." Asks if it's strange to follow the world's trends. Parkle says it's strange but respects her nonetheless. The announcer begins to introduce the next participants. At that moment, the ground starts to shake. A tsunami begins to form above. A man asks where the traitors who disrespected his palace are. Seeing the situation, the protagonist doesn't know what they're talking about. The other girl says they're the sons of the Dragon King of Water. The other man says he doesn't want to hear any excuses. They dared to disrespect the dragon's walls. Asks if they thought he wouldn't notice they were using the competition for hidden purposes. Their real goal was to exchange treasures away from the palace's eyes. So they'll be fine if they hand over the traitors. But he won't fail to deliver his father's message. He demands they return the 7-branched sword's axis they're carrying. If they show sincerity and offer apologies, his father might forgive them and return the items they brought to that place. Those around seem to disagree with all of it. The man asks if that's their decision. Grabbing his weapon, he begins to prepare for an attack. Says all of them will be swallowed by the ocean and cast into the 7 seas. Starts to unleash the ocean that's been contained. Parkle, watching this unfold, thinks everything happened very suddenly, but he needs to take advantage of the situation and merge the axis with his sword. Shortly after, he seems to find the person he's looking for. Thinks if he can make the resonance between the two like before, it might work. At that moment, a water dragon begins to envelop the area. Submerged in the water, the protagonist thinks if things continue like this, he won't be able to make it. He's got no choice but to do it. He begins to draw a magic sword, feeling pleased it worked. He quickly manages to escape the water. However, he ends up plunging back into the ocean. Thinks he didn't expect to be thrown back into the water again. He realizes he needs to get out of that place soon. At that moment, a glow begins to envelop the area. The protagonist's sword seems different. Parkle thinks it's one of the strongest energies he's ever seen in his life. Wonders if it's by chance the golden aura from the axis. Probably because it's been held and sealed before, that's why it's got such overwhelming energy. Wonders if it's not too much energy, because it's even pushing his own energy. Because of that, it's too much power. If it continues like that, his body won't be able to withstand it. He's got to release the energy. He's shocked. Thinks he only struck once already caused damage to spacetime. He's surprised. That magic seems to be trying to engulf him. Begins to fall in that place. Later, the protagonist ends up falling into an unfamiliar location. Looking around, he's astonished. Wonders where he is. Supposes it's a spacetime created due to the enormous power of that sword. There's worse than the garden gates that led to an entirely different dimension. Wonders if by striking another blow, he could return to the same place as before. Better to explore a bit before trying that. At that moment, he's struck by something. Before him, an unknown person's walking. Observing the man, Parkle seems to recognize him. Supposes it's that shinobi from earlier. Thinks the boy's been so enraged before that he followed him to this place. Shortly after, the boy steps on the protagonist. Says there are more tools in the world than he imagined, but at least he'll let Parkle choose which one he'll use. The protagonist says he doesn't know how to speak Japanese. The boy tells him to choose the tool for himself. Shortly after, a plant appears beside Parkle. Pulling the plant out, the shinobi asks what Parkle's doing. Calls him a weak coward. Even though he won those battles, he hasn't done anything but sent his spirits to fight in his place. Asks if Parkle thinks he could do something with earth magic. The shinobi still intends to make the protagonist swallow his words. Parkle asks what he's talking about. Right after, that plant transforms into something different. The shinobi seems to start having hallucinations, eventually falling to the ground. Parkle tells him he can't just touch anything he sees. At that moment, Blood begins to gush from the shinobi's mouth. Soon after, he collapses to the ground. Parkle says he's managed to kill the shinobi, but even so that's all there is to it. Shortly after, another person appears, calling Parkle an idiot. The bear in human form says every time he shows up, Parkle's completely wrecked. The bear mentions everything's fine. Parkle just needs to use an elixir to recover like he always does. The protagonist says he can tell just by looking at his face. Asks him to be honest with him. The spirit says it looks like that's been a critical blow to one of his kidneys. Parkle thinks it feels like his energy's draining out of his body. If things continue like that, he could lose all his energy. Not only that, but also his life. The spirit reminds him once again he doesn't need to endure everything alone. The bear mentions Deok helped him before. For that reason, Parkle should be fine since his core contained the energy of a supreme immortal. The power Deok given him still exists even before his transformation. The bear affirms Parkle's got the dragon's blessing, a power almost no one has, capable of even injuring divine and celestial beings. He questions if the young man who hasn't even lived for 100 years already wants to die. Adds it'd be better for Parkle to be eaten by a bear than to die lying like a sack of potatoes. The bear doubts Deok would want the protagonist to die in such a humiliating way. Shortly after, the protagonist apologizes for everything. He begins to fade away. Yua's ordering one of her servants to leave that place. Thinks eventually she'll kill him. Believes those people know absolutely nothing. They must be savages. The East sees her territory. Yua mentions they don't even appreciate her kindness in getting rid of that man. Now they're raising their blade against her. Recalling the words of that man, the girl thinks the Dragon King wouldn't ruin his celestial battle with such an absurd lie. She wonders where that old serpent heard such things. Trying to create a hero amid that celestial battle. Even though her plan to be worshipped by humans failed, it's not completely in vain. For that reason, they should wait and see what happens. That way, soon all the heads of the bastard sea will be brought to her. The protagonist's waking up. Wonders how long he's been asleep. As he checks how his energy's flowing, he notes his lower core should recover soon. As he regains consciousness, Parkle wonders what's going on. Questions why there are horns on his forehead. His senses seem much sharper. Either way, not much time should have passed since the incident. Remarks his body feels cleaner than he expected. Looking around, he supposes someone's been taking care of him. Guesses it might have been the bear along with Sunbeam. Wonders if he's still in the same place. He consumed the magic pearl using the bamboo fan, creating that barrier. For that reason, Sunbeam might have been taking risks to take care of him. Opening a door, Parkle goes searching for that girl. He's surprised by what he sees. Wonders how that place turned into a forest. He built a shield there using his plants, but now the trees VE grown immensely. Leads him to suppose a lot of times passed. Looking to the side, he notices beyond the barrier there's only destruction. Thinks those traces must have been left from a fight involving that girl. Wonders where she is. At that moment, he hears a noise. Quickly, he goes to see where it's coming from. He's surprised. Notices a house in the middle of that place. In front of him, a blue creature's lurking. He realizes it's his spirit. Remarks it's grown significantly. Parkle asks why his spirit's so afraid of him. Supposes it might be because of the horns. The spirit lunges at Parkle. Parkle easily dodges, tells the creature it shouldn't bite its owner. At that moment, the creature seems to realize it's indeed its master. Completely stops the confrontation. Parkle remarks it's very cute. Mentions there's not much change in its energy even after eating the magic pearl. Probably because it's using its strength to recover its inner core. Looking around, Parkle's surprised. Notices his clothes are lying there. Wonders if there's something he can use. Additionally, he spots a scroll. Reading it, Parkle questions if it's written in Japanese. Assuming it's one of those scrolls written by shinobi. According to what the spirit said during the competition, the crow crest of the Suzuki clan was one of Yagarasu's secrets. He speculates these are the shinobi's clothes. Wonders if they're the kind that have the ability to transform. Quite interesting just to wear them. Shortly after, the young man seems to notice something. Wonders what it is. He senses it's coming from the same place that has traces of a battle. Observing a group, Parkle wonders what they're doing. They're trying to break through the barrier. Noticing the color of their hair and attire, he wonders if they're from that place. He's shocked by what he sees. Thinks it looks just like the Goblin Club Gwack gave him last time. So familiar. Realizes there's a group of goblins. He doesn't think there'd be goblins in the space created by the seven-branched sword. Guesses this their habitat. Wonders if they're trying to invade his territory. Seeing the goblins are breaking through, the protagonist says he's got to stop them. He's surprised by what he sees next. Behind those monsters, a person appears. They ask who the boy is. It's Parkle standing before them. He asks which of the monsters is in command. Showing respect, the commander introduces himself as two. Asks to be taken to the owner of the sword. The protagonist doesn't understand what he's talking about. Asks what he wants with the owner of the sword. The goblin warns not just anyone can go to that place. Only the sword's owner can do that. If Parkle doesn't tell him where the owner is, he'll surely kill the boy. Parkle says he can't tell him. Asks how's he supposed to say anything if the goblin doesn't explain what he wants with the man. The goblin says he wants to find the man and punish him. Their king made a promise that a man worthy of owning the place would come with a sword, but that man never showed up. Parkle thinks he doesn't know what's going on, but it seems the seven-branched swords got some connection to that place. Frustrated, the goblins say they waited too long for the promise to be fulfilled. Their leader passed it down from one generation to the next. They've grown tired of waiting. That wretch man who's worthy of the sword deserves to be punished. The goblin demands to be taken to him right then. Threatens to cut off Parkle's head if he doesn't comply. Parkle, observing the situation, remains silent. He asks if the goblin's seen a red bear wandering around. The goblin responds if it's what he's thinking. He told it to undo the barrier, but it hasn't obeyed. Since this their world, they imprisoned it in one of their facilities. Parkle grows very angry upon hearing this. But he knows he's got to stay calm. At least now he knows where the bear is. He tells the goblin he's in fact the owner of the sword. The goblin calls him a liar. Says if Parkle wants to get beaten up, he should just say so. Parkle's completely shocked by what the monster said. The monster begins hurling insults. Claims Parkle's too small. Looks like someone who's never fought a day in his life. Embarrassed, the protagonist mutters they're complete idiots. The monster tells Parkle if he's not going to break the barrier for them, he should leave. They won't kill him if he doesn't get in their way. Grabbing his magic weapon, the protagonist grows increasingly angry. States they're underestimating him. He prepares to attack, ordering his spirit to spit at them. The monster, shocked by what just happened, panics and starts to flee. In a matter of seconds, they're completely defeated. Parkle tells them if they continue acting like that, he'll make them spit out more red beans. The group begs for him not to do that. The protagonist, impressed, thinks those creatures really hate red beans. He asks if their leader's strong. The goblin replies she is. Mentions she wields a staff like no one else. Parkle questions if merely knowing how to use a staff's enough to be strong. He demands more information. The goblin adds there's one more thing. She's got a golden treasure. Suddenly, a voice interrupts. Says the protagonist doesn't need to know that. Above them, a figure with scarlet hair appears. She scolds the goblins, calls them idiots for trusting just anyone like that. Seeing the woman, Parkle assumes she's the goblin's leader. She bades her subordinates for forcing her to come there. Questions how they could be so foolish. Warns this time they'll spend 10 years trapped in that place. Seemingly transports them into a divine item. Observing the scene, Parkle surmises the item's the treasure the goblins mentioned. Since she's their leader, she's probably very powerful. Because of this, he thinks it's best to start with his red bean attack. He launches an attack at the leader. She dodges it swiftly. Praises the attempt. Notes it might have worked on her subordinates but not on her. She commands her spirits to emerge from the artifact. Parkle's surprised by her abilities. Realizes she's stronger than he anticipated. He knows he's got to be careful. He prepares another skill, orders his spirit to attack her. A massive battle ensues. The goblin leader asks what Parkle thinks of her skill. It's been a long time since she's had this much fun. Parkle, deep in thought, remains silent, recalling a memory from his past where someone claimed a staff like hers could achieve anything, but now it seems like a lie. The bear spirit remarks it's called a goblin staff, capable of anything they can imagine. Since goblins aren't great thinkers, they rely on instincts and have no strategy. Additionally, they've got excellent physical abilities thanks to their strong bones. Despite their simplicity, if they wanted they could easily dominate the world. Returning to present, Parkle wonders if the goblin leader's level of imagination's superior to the other fools he encountered earlier. Notes she doesn't seem to fear his red beans. Questions what he can do in this situation. Glancing at the barrier, he thinks it could work in his favor. At that moment, the goblin leader asks what he's staring at. Attacks him. Parkle barely manages to block her strike. She questions why he's paying attention to anything else besides her in the middle of their battle. As he fends off her attack, Parkle stays silent, quickly counterattacks her from behind, though she narrowly avoids it. The leader begins summoning her spirits again, successfully hitting the protagonist. An explosion occurs. Parkle's thrown to the ground. The leader asks if he's reached his limit. If they should finish things now. Says he should start begging for mercy. Orders all her spirits to attack him. Thinks once the fool screams, she'll trap him along with that bear. Parkle regains his strength. Claims he who laughs last laughs best. Summons wooden golems, each holding jars of red beans. They pour the beans onto the goblin leader, leaving her completely shocked. The artifact she wielded seems to absorb everything. Parkle remarks she's been waiting for him to scream, but she made a huge mistake. He grabs the artifact, orders the bear to come out immediately. The spirit emerges, says it knew the protagonist would rescue it. However, it scolds Parkle for being an idiot and leaving it trapped long enough to feel sad. Parkle asks if the bear's got any idea how long it's been trapped there. The bear says over 150 days passed. Time works a bit differently in that world but isn't drastically different. Parkle suggests if that's the case, the best thing to do is get out of there quickly. He frees the goblins trapped inside the artifact. Questions whether the woman's truly the leader of that place. Observing the protagonist, the goblin woman mentions he's short with broad shoulders. Leaves the young man completely embarrassed by her remark. He responds he's of average height. The goblin says size doesn't matter. Her mother told her the same. At first, she thought it didn't make sense because Parkle bested her in battle. Looking at him, the woman says he seems smart, isn't unattractive. She's made up her mind. Asks the protagonist to marry her. Leaves Parkle completely stunned by what he's heard. The spirit, amidst the situation, wonders if Parkle might actually get married. Questions how they'd even formalize it, considering if everything will turn out fine. Confused, Parkle asks what she's talking about. The bear asks if he hasn't yet realized the goblins are connected to the seven-branched sword. Recalling the prophecy the man mentioned, Parkle thinks this might be about that promise. A man would someday come with a certain type of sword. Supposes they're waiting for a man worthy of marrying her. Parkle says that's got nothing to do with him. The person who was supposed to come with the seven-branched swords probably already dead. The bear says that's not how the woman thinks about it. Parkle figures he's too young. This got to be a dream. He needs to wake up quickly from it. He asks the woman where she hid the sword. Threatens to make her eat so many red beans her belly'll burst if she doesn't tell him. Orders her to speak immediately. The woman refuses to reveal anything. Says she won't give the sword to the protagonist until she's given birth to 3 children with him. Parkle quickly orders they give her more red beans. The bear, watching this situation, remarks he probably won't get anything out of her that way. Parkle notes goblins are incredibly stubborn. It'll be difficult to make them talk like this. The bear questions why Parkle doesn't just marry her right away. They've been stuck in that place for a long time, probably don't understand things properly. Parkle should realize he can't force them into anything. Besides, that artifact's their greatest treasure. The bear suggests since time passes differently in that place compared to the real world, maybe Parkle should marry her and stay there for a while. Looking at the situation, Parkle thinks if he continues this way, he won't get anywhere. Instead of intimidating her, he thinks of bribing them a little. Later, the goblin woman seems to be waking up. She finds herself tied up. In front of her's a bit of food. At that moment, the protagonist notices she's woken up once again. The woman declares she won't say anything until he marries her. Parkle replies it doesn't make a difference. Tells her to think about what she wants while he enjoys the food. Mentions how delicious the rice cakes are. Watching him eat, the goblin woman's desire for the food grows immense. She admits she wants a piece too. Parkle throws one into her mouth. She's immediately enchanted by the taste. Begs for another piece. With a mischievous look, the protagonist watches as she starts devouring them all at once. The goblin says he shouldn't think this'll make her agree to marry him just because of it. She still insists they've got to have 3 children together. As she chews the food, the protagonist mentions there are only 2 rice cakes left. Tears well up in the goblin's eyes as she pleads for just one more. Parkle picks up another rice cake, leaving just one. Begins to eat it. Leaves the goblin completely disheartened as she mutters she just wanted to marry someone. Parkle says they can marry whenever they want, but he can't marry her at that moment. In disbelief, the woman says he won't do this. Accuses him of planning to say he'll marry her in 100 years, which is far too long for her. Offering her another plate, Parkle says he'll give it to her. Mentions he can even teach her how to make that kind of food herself. Holding her meal, the goblin woman seems to accept the young man's offer. Amidst the situation, Parkle thinks he won't mind marrying when he's 120 years old. A little while later, the goblin performs a spell to reveal a mysterious chest. Parkle asks if it's a treasure chest. The goblin replies she doesn't know. Her mother only gave it to her. She starts searching for something. After finding it, she hands it to the protagonist. Tells him to take it. Mentions it'll be a token of their engagement. Parkle asks when it was. The woman responds they're seeds. Confused, the protagonist wonders what he can do with them. He quickly becomes surprised. Nowadays, people no longer care much about the stories of the deoctum. Only want to be remarkable. If they got hold of something like that. However, goblins, for example, are honest about their possessive desires. Hold on to things, trading items and talents freely among themselves. But someone with valuable talents wouldn't part with them so easily. This often led to even more complicated situations. For that reason, negotiating with goblins by offering something they excel at was the easiest way to get out of a situation like this. Taking the seed, the bear mentions it must be valuable in some way. Asks the young man to inquire more about it from the goblin. Parkle wonders if he can keep something as good as that. He calls the goblin, who affectionately refers to him as Love. Parkle asks if those seeds came from a particular place. The girl responds her grandmother took them from her world before coming to that place. Explains the former owner of the seed was one of the ministers. As she mentioned, he was famous for cultivating herbs and medicinal plants, traveled between worlds. However, he was forced to treat an incurable illness one day, ended up imprisoned, dying of starvation. So he gave the seed to her grandmother in exchange for hiding the rest of his family. Parkle asks if he'd been a herbalist. Reflecting, Parkle thinks the book he'd been trying to decipher to create medicine was likely his. The goblin adds the man worked for an extremely powerful figure. He wielded a sword and rode a horse. People said his arrogance had pierced the heavens, leading to his eventual downfall. Asks if there'd been a war at the time. Things had turned bad as a result. He gave the seed to her grandmother to remove his family from the battlefield. Parkle asks if that madman dragged his family into war. The woman confirms it. He didn't want to suffer from their loss. One can imagine what kind of man he was. Parkle reflects on the word, loss. Thinks it's even more disappointing than the suffering itself. The woman stands up, asks if they can continue. Parkle, observing the situation, urges her to calm down. Afterward, the woman takes up her staff again. Begins attacking the protagonist. Surprisingly, Parkle feels no pain at all. The woman says she's infusing something into him. Parkle mentions he's not feeling anything different. The goblin tells him to relax, assures him he'll eventually figure out how to use it to his advantage. Looking at the chest, Parkle thinks now all he needs is the 7-branched sword. Opening the box, he finds the sacred sword inside. The bear remarks swords of that level usually store a lot of energy, but this one seems quite different. Since its basic attributes wood, there's no reason for Parkle to hesitate. Parkle replies the contradiction of wood's precisely the earth. Even so, the bear insists no matter what happens, Parkle shouldn't stop seeing the energy. The bear urges him to go ahead with it anyway. At that moment, Parkle grabs the sword. A giant beam of light envelopes him. He appears to struggle with controlling the sword. The bear warns him not to let go of the sword under any circumstances. Parkle, irritated, asks if the bear thinks he can't handle the immense power of the sword. The bear, astonished by what he's witnessing, mentions it's the first time he's seen Parkle like that. The energy's now emanating even more powerfully. Right after, the sword seems to calm down. The bear says it's incredible, as if he's watching the spirit of an elite general guiding the sword along with him. That's why he knows the 7-branched sword's amazing. Parkle thanks that he acted on instinct when he grabbed the sword. Felt like he'd been using it for a long time. Assuming that must be the talent she gave him. He asks the goblin if she wants to get married at that moment. The scene cuts to the protagonist's world city. That cheerful spirit mentions it's very enjoyable. Parkle thinks it's been a long time since he's been to Korea. The protagonist wanted to have his spirit before, but during the fight against the goblin leader he ended up using too much energy. Became to the nearest city since he could make it to Beck Mountain. Thinks the goblin wanted to go with him. She's still very irresponsible. Mentions it's been 7 months since his competition. Still, many people are talking about it. Furthermore, since that incident, the Dragon King of the East Sea hasn't returned yet. Civilians and reporters started criticizing the invasion of the East Sea people without a valid reason. Also began criticizing the 3 princesses of Korea for not saying a single word. A month later, the Dragon King appeared, apologizing. Says it's been a mistake, a failure in communication of the information received. But even so, no one's able to forgive either of the powers yet. The bear asks what happened to the dragons of the West and South Seas. Parkle responds he doesn't want to get involved in that situation. They might not have been on the side of the East Sea. The spirit asserts it's quite obvious. They just wanted to cause a commotion for no reason. The relationship between the dragons wasn't very good, but they'd once united when there was a war between humans and immortals. Observing that situation, the protagonist thinks there's still a problem. Wonders where the 7-branched sword is. The only thing they know is the protector of the sword notified the Nordic Administrative Council to stay in Korea and participate in the subjugation of the East Sea. Thinks this must be happening because he ended up grabbing it and going to another dimension. Mentions the man's extremely strong, he's got a connection to that sword. Knowing someone like him's looking for it makes him even more anxious about finding his sword again. The bear responds the East Sea's been really foolish. Even humans are starting to look at them with anger. Shortly after, a message informs their time using the systems ended, thanking them for their preference. The bear asks the young man what they're going to do next. He responds they've got to go to Wanak Mountain. He's sure he's on the list of missing or dead persons. If he appears out of nowhere, the garden will become very suspicious of it. For that reason, he's going to stay quiet and wait for the dust to settle while he watches the situation. The bear says when they get there, he's going to take a look at his original body. It's been a long time since he felt its energy. That happened right after entering the dimension of those goblins. He thought he'd feel it again when he returned to that world. However, he felt nothing. That's why he's becoming concerned. Surprised, Parkle wonders if it's been 7 months since the bear felt energy in his body. Asks if that's not too serious. For that reason, it should leave immediately. Because of that, they head to the mountain at that moment. Sometime later, the two seem to be near the destined place. Completely surprised by what they've seen. That tree's grown absurdly. With it, There are beehives. Surprised, Parkle wonders how those bees could penetrate that barrier. The bear says everything's fine. Sometimes one insect or another can end up getting in. Observing a branch of leaves, the protagonist questions what that is. The bear seems in disbelief at what he's seen. Under that place, another bear's resting. The bear's surprised. Mentions his original body's very strange. For that reason, he doesn't know what's happening. Shortly after, those bees seem to start attacking the two of them. Parkle quickly pulls out his scroll along with his artifact, which begins to summon all his spirits. Orders his spirits to attack those bees. A battle with them begins. For Parkle, there are too many of those bees. He thinks they're very difficult to kill even using his abilities. For that reason, he needs something stronger. Shortly after, the bear ends up awakening his true form. Begins to charge at those bees. Parkle asks him to wait. The spirit says he can let him take care of all of them with his fire. If it weren't for their hive, he would have attacked with all his strength. But he can't hurt the tree, simply infested with those bees. Wonders if there's any other way to get everything off that tree. Parkle ponders over a situation that might work. While watching those bees on the ground, assumes they've not been killed even after being attacked. In the same moment, he seems to have an idea about a good plan. Immediately, Parkle asks the bear to wait for a moment. Asks him to step aside. Right after, he seems to throw something in front of those bees, which are then defeated. As a consequence, they end up fleeing from the tree, crashing into those barriers. Observing that situation, the protagonist feels relieved. Mentions he managed to set up that barrier. Surprised, the bear says he didn't know how those bees ended up in that place. Just a guess, but there's a story that in the past, the Queen of the West built something called Golden Peak on a mountain. But it's been a long time since she appeared. The Queen of the West's the goddess from Chinese mythology, considered a fairy, possessed potions of immortality. Pointing to the tree, the protagonist asks if he's saying that because of what happened. Mentions a long time ago, some bees were traveling. When looking for an area to settle, they smelled that place. For that reason, settled in the tree. Standing up, the young man assumes all the bees are already dead. The smoke inside the barriers already disappeared. Asks the spirit if they should take a look. Shortly after, they seem to approach the tree. Opening a hive that's filled with honey. Says it's not ordinary. Clear it's got pure energy in it. States they can even preserve it. Parkle questions whether it'd be possible to make a stock of honey in that place. Assuming he could use it somehow to make an extremely powerful elixir. Observing those honeycombs, he ends up finding larvae. Mentions they still seem to be alive inside that hive. If he's not mistaken, they've got many nutrients that help them grow. Begins to taste them. Mentions he wants to know if that's true. Shortly after, the system announces a drug's been consumed. The property of the drug's called royal jelly, which as a result stimulates the protagonist's growth. The protagonist says thinking the larvae had honey, he'd assumed it'd be sweeter. Observing the protagonist, the bear seems surprised. Asks why his head's glowing. Noticing the young man's horns, the bear assumes he's the son of a dragon. Completely shaken, the bear questions what's happening. Parkle responds it must be because of the draconic power he consumed. For the bear, that doesn't make sense. Asks how he's taking on dragon characteristics as if he'd been born one. Parkle replies lately only strange things have been happening. He saw what he's wearing before. Observing that scar, the spirit mentions it's really strange. Questions if the young man's okay. Parkle asks if he knew what's happening. The bear replies he doesn't know anything about it. A dragon's born with the power of water offered by nature. Thus, they practice martial arts, accumulating this power for thousands of years. For that reason, they're an extremely legendary existence. But humans are completely different from dragons. They can use more elements of nature. In the case of someone being both human and draconic, they could become practically invincible. For this reason, Parkle could end up becoming a monster that's never existed on the face of the earth. Mentions it must be hard to bear all that power inside him. Parkle responds he still hasn't fully developed. Because of that, it'd be harder to manage. The bear says seeing his core receive the power, his horn started to grow. For this reason, he could end up becoming a complete dragon after consuming more energy. But since he's human, he could still suffer some side effects as a consequence. Moreover, if he became a dragon, he might end up being forced to live in the water. Immediately after, our boy begins to ponder over the possibility of becoming a dragon. Thinks as his horns began to grow, it means he can consume the power of water. If he left the larvae there without any issues, they could end up turning into new bees, then produce more honey and many more larvae for him. For that reason, he could take incredible advantage of that. Shortly after, our boy responds he wants to learn to use his power better. Thanks to the pill that woman gave him, his power didn't go out of control. He was able to drastically increase his energy. Since the elixir had the wood attribute, it's like a light at the end of the tunnel for him. Asks what the correlation and contradiction of his elements are. Some elixir he used were ineffective, probably because of his wood element. For that reason, if he used one that contradicted wood, he'd probably be able to use the other properties without suffering too many negative effects. The bear mentions it seems like a good idea. Asks what exactly he wants to learn. He responds he can try using that. Pulling out various notes that were in his backpack, mentions their books left by the disciple of the celestial wolf. Another's a scroll from that shinobi's family from earlier. He didn't have much to do in that place. For that reason, he thought it'd be fun to learn that kind of thing. Picking up a scroll, he mentions he found it very interesting. States he wants to learn that shinobi's technique. With the 7-branched sword, he can already use 3 legendary items he possesses. The bear responds he's got good items and a good plan. All he needs to do now is train and not attract too much attention. Shortly after, the protagonist responds there's still something bothering him. Mentions he hasn't yet delivered the black jade to his brother Deok. The bear asks why he hasn't given the sprout to him in one of the many times they've seen each other. Still doesn't understand why he cares so much about giving it to the young man. Mentions the boy's a very intelligent person, but he still needs to see the world in a broader way. Knows he wants to make a flute with the jade sprout. Asks if he really thinks he'd be able to do that. Bets he's not sure such a threatening item could be functional. Calling the protagonist a fool, states he knows someone who would make that item. Sure he'd succeed. Surprised, Parkle asks if he knows someone capable of forging a flute. The bear responds even if he does, he wouldn't even think about giving it to Deok. The protagonist asks him to relax. He's also very interested in that flute. The bear questions if he's not lying about that. The boy responds he's not. He'll deliver it to Deok's brother. Thinks it won't make much difference whether he delivers it or uses it in the end. Accepting the protagonist's offer, the bear says they'd go to that place immediately. The blacksmith he's going to introduce known as the god of fire. A long time ago, he settled his debt with his nephew and sister. For that reason, they're heading to Mount Chilbo. At that moment, Parkle asks where that is. The bear responds maybe he doesn't know because it's in North Korea. Parkle's completely surprised. Asks if the bear's by any chance North Korean. Moreover, the boy had a sister. The bear says he's not who he's thinking of. That mountain he named after his sister's not the same as that other mountain. After all, he's not the spirit of that place. However, his nephew's called Dangun. According to the lady, in the North Korean peninsula, there are 3 great powers that control the entire country. It seemed the bear's sisters in Adiel on Mount Kumgang.